Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The manhwa starts off introducing us to the game Ether World. It was released 10 years ago as a dating simulator, mostly for a female demographic. But it was heavily dominated by male players. It allowed players to play a variety of characters. Starting from easy and efficient characters, to the opposite end of that spectrum, difficult and inefficient. Amongst them was the worst of the worst, one character known for his difficulty level and horrible features. There was one freak who mained this trash character Baek Yeseol for over 10 years. Of course that is none other than our main character, but due to poor translation we don't know his name, just that he enjoys playing Yeseol. Inside of his apartment we see him drinking some coffee, and that there are new posts all over the forum about a new update. They all mention something called the Dark Demon Dragon and how it deleted their characters. He finds it curious that there's a final boss to a dating simulator. Saying it usually ends when you get together with one of the characters. A famous ranker made an entire rant yapping about how the boss is unbeatable. He puts his coffee down saying it doesn't make sense that there'd be a monster with magic nullifying skills in a world full of magic. He says it must be a bug since people are losing their characters. He logs in and sees the dragon, which is called the 13th moon of the Black Night. He explains to us how in Ether World there is a cult known as the Dark Demonic Humans. Their goal is to help another world called Persona Gate to take over the world. When they finally managed to achieve this goal, that is when the Dark Demon Dragon had appeared. He says that 90% of the continent has been taken over by Persona Gate. But it's not like he cares, he only focuses on PvP and not the story. But he can tell the lore is getting messed up, he wonders if that's okay. But says it's not like he can avoid fighting it, so he might as well try it. We see the dragon on his screen, and he clicks yes on the prompt. He says time to put his last 10 years of gameplay to use here. He logs in, and we see Yeseol standing before the dragon. He says if he were to explain his character, he is the only one that is unable to use magic. Despite the fact that everyone else can, which is what makes him so difficult. He is worse than any normal extra in the game. Okay, we lied, he can use some magic, but only one single skill. The boss goes to prepare an attack, and launches it out toward Yeseol. As it gets close, Yeseol grins and we see him teleporting along the backside of the boss, as it's revealed the only spell he can use is blink. He keeps his momentum. Yeseol watches and waits for a chance, and we learn that his blink spell takes him randomly between 3 to 10 meters. The direction he blinks in is also random, so if he doesn't control the distance well he will die instantly due to the speed and impact. On top of that, the cooldown time and mana usage is nuts. There's also a penalty of being unable to move for 2 seconds after using it. So anyone can learn it, but most people don't use it. But in Yeseol's case, he has mastered it. He can control which direction he will go, as well as the distance. And has no penalty on blinking. It doesn't use up his mana since he has no mana to begin with. Unlike other spells, blink was nothing more than just a movement ability. But he became obsessed with Yeseol since everyone about him was skill-based. So over the last 10 years he has only played as him, unable to use magic. We see his attack on the boss's head, as he cuts all the way down its throat landing on the floor. The boss lets out one final scream, and he turns to see its corpse. As a message appears, saying that he's defeated the boss. He says that shit was a straight letdown, he expected it to be harder since Yeseol is a bad character. He says oh well, and that it's nice. He goes to post on the community saying he'll flex it on them. But status windows appear in front of him in real life, saying since the wrong ending has been reached, 90% of Ether World has been destroyed. However, he was the closest to reaching it. He is confused and his heart starts to race, as the message begs him to find the true ending. He screams as a bright light appears and he straight vanishes in his chair. He opens his eyes, and we see him lying on the floor. He sits up asking what is going on, he shivers asking where he is. Then looks over to see a mirror. He moves over to it, and is surprised to see in the mirror that his appearance is actually Baek Yeseol. A window appears, and looks over seeing episode Escape the Chase. He realizes this Yushoel's prologue quests, he says no way and reaches into his pocket and is surprised to see the entrance certificate to Stella Academy. He says it is hard to believe, but it's definitely Ether World. He says he had to be Yeseol, but says he needs to think about it logically to try and reach the true ending. He says he knows there are multiple endings to the game. Then has an idea, he can't believe nobody has reached the true ending in the last 10 years. But says this isn't the time to be thinking about that. Since he remembers this, right after Yeseol wakes up the people chasing after him burst into the hut. He looks outside to see a group of hooded men, and quickly hides out of their line of sight. He says they are already here. One of the men notices a hut and says there's a hut over there. One of them tells the rest to go search it. Yeseol says he knows what is next, and that there is a limit to how long he can avoid them. Since he can't fight them right now either, he wonders what he should do, and a window appears saying that he can use blink. He is surprised that he can use it this early. Of course we already covered blink, but since he has magic leakage syndrome, which makes him unable to use mana, it means he doesn't have to worry about the high mana usage, and the spell is his only hope. Now that the short recap is over, snap back to reality. We see that blink is level 0, and has a cooldown of 3 seconds, and can only be used once. He says he only knows how to do it while controlling a character with a keyboard and mouse. We see the group rushing up to the cabin, and Yeseol hears their footsteps outside and says shit that was fast. He says there's no time left, and all he can do is try it out. He runs out of the cabin, and they spot him running through the woods. They begin to chase him, and he says this is the first part of his prologue. He needs to use blink to avoid the pursuers. As he keeps running, he explains how they wear magic boots that allow them to run faster. Thus the only way he can successfully escape is if he uses blink. He calms himself down, saying he's used blink countless times before. The timing is burned into his muscle memory. They ask him if he has no intentions to stop. He turns to see they are right behind him. The main disadvantage of blink is that if he fails to control the distance he'll turn into a bug running into a windshield. While he's explaining it to us, a man with a scar yells telling him to die, while going to attack him. Yeseol continues his explanation saying it's a different case when he uses it. He teleports out of the man's attack and creates distance. He says he did it and they are surprised, wondering if he is a mage. What I'm guessing is the leader, tells them it's good for them since the user is paralyzed for 2 seconds after. But sees that isn't the case as Yeseol keeps moving. As he keeps running, he tells himself he needs to use it carefully, and has to use the uneven terrain to his advantage. Since players who can't use blink, can't make it to the next scenario. 99% of the Yeseol players couldn't pass the prologue. Even the 1% who did were unable to surpass the all of blink distance control, and continuous blinking. He starts to count down and once he hits 0 he blinks across the terrain. Scar Bro asks if he's insane for using blink in this state. He tells those who can use magic to move to the front line and attack that bastard. We see their mage squad pull up. Yeseol recognizes what they are planning. The second part of the prologue forces the player to use blink, avoiding the magic being cast at them. In the game you can see everything behind you since it's a monitor, which made it much easier to dodge. Since his magic leakage syndrome trait is being used, its positive aspects come out called sixth sense and cognitive acceleration. Bro starts thinking in 4K, and can feel the trajectories of the arrows behind him. He starts to dance between the attacks, and when there's one he cannot avoid, he says now is the time. He takes a half step forward then blinks. To avoid the massive attack that it was. He turns behind him to see the crater left behind from the attack. And says that was too close for comfort. He keeps running, saying the final part is coming up now. He starts to catch his breath as we see floating rocks and a giant canyon in front of him. He says that crossing this is the next part. But the only way to do it is to control his blink distance perfectly, then he can meet up with some passing mages and escape, which is the end of the prologue. He will need to cancel his spell, which occurs in 0.1 seconds. If he fails even once, he is dead right here. He says there are 20 floating boulders, and that the 0.1 seconds is easier said than done. And asks what kind of freak would make this part of the prologue. However, it is still doable. The problem is, and we hear the group behind him. They point out saying there he is, they are much closer than he anticipated. And says the distance between them is about 100 meters and since his cooldown is 3 seconds it won't be enough to make it across. So there's only one choice left for his survival, he needs to kill all of his pursuers. We see him hiding behind a rock, saying he knows this is really crazy. How can he try and do this when he's never even been in a fight before? He says if this were a game the system would make it impossible to attack those that are chasing him. But in reality that's not the case, there are no rules forcing him to play how the game has intended it. The thought of killing someone doesn't bother him. Well, specifically these guys, as they are his parents' enemies in the story. He hears their footsteps right behind the rock, and says they are here, and he truly believes he can win. He reveals himself to them, and Scar says there he is. He orders his men to go catch him. As they charge at Yeseol, he takes a stance ready to fight. One of them smirks, asking if he dares fight them all alone, saying that he is going to die here. Yesiel sees how far he needs to go and casts blink. The guy is surprised as he feels a sharp pain in his chest. Scar is also confused, as we see the guy not moving, until he starts to cough up a lot of blood. It lands on Yesiel's face, and he says the feeling of blood running down his fingertips outweighs any feeling of guilt he has towards these people. He slices at the man, saying that he's only doing it for survival, then kicks him towards his friends. Scar catches him, and they see that Yesiel starts to run away. They say not to let him escape no matter what. Yesiel says he took one down, but it won't be so easy next time. He wonders how to go about it, and wonders why it's so quiet. He glances behind, and sees they are right on his ass. He realizes they didn't give up, and that they might be using magic. His foot begins to slip, and Scar says this is their chance, telling his magicians to attack him. He begins to chant for his spell, and launches a fire arrow at Yesiel. As it gets close, it's revealed that there are actually many fire attacks being launched toward him. Yesiel says there's so many of them, but spots somewhere to escape to. He jumps towards it and casts blink, leaving the attacks exploding where he was before. As the smoke settles from the attack, they think that he has been killed from it, but sees that the crater is empty, and he realizes that Yesiel isn't there. But we see him coming from the top rope. The man looks up to see him directly above him. Yesiel says one of the peculiarities of blink is that it maintains the same momentum before and after use. He activates blink again, stabbing the man in the chest without giving him a chance to react. The man screams, and another one of the men hear it, wondering what's going on. But he is quickly dispatched as well by Yesiel slices through him. A cold sweat runs down Scar as he sees his comrade's lifeless body beside Yesiel. He starts to huff, clearly getting tired, and says there are only two left now. He needs to end it before the two who fell behind catch up to them. Scar says he's quite unique, and he has a fast reaction speed for a mage, and asks Yesiel who exactly he is. Yesiel says his reaction speed is indeed faster than most pro gamers. But that's only in online games. He can't just keep dodging forever, especially in such close proximity. He decides that he needs to end it before it drags out. Scar says he's already figured his style out, and he only uses blink along with his dagger. As long as he protects his vitals, a dagger won't be a problem to him. Yesiel gets closer, and Scar yells, casting a spell called Ice Wave. Yesiel returns with blink, and Scar thinks that it's over for him due to his spell going out first. But then hears behind him that his comrade has just had their throat slit by Yesiel. Scar realizes he was baited into thinking he was the target. And earlier he ran like someone who's never been in combat before, but now it's different. Yesiel says that was earlier. But now that he's practiced on them, he feels confident. Scar gets pissed, saying they went easy on him. That's their fault for underestimating him. He shouts, saying that he'll kill him right now. Yesiel isn't afraid and rushes forward at him. He rears his shoulder back, and yeets the spear he picked up as it flies at Scar. Scar says that using a blink head-on puts him at a risk of being counterattacked. So the spear is bait. He blocks it, saying he won't let him have his way, and smirks, saying he'll now appear right beside him. And he swings to his right, but realizes that he was once again baited into thinking that's where he'd be, as he gets stabbed through the chest by Yesiel. Officially ending the first episode of escaping his pursuers, he obtains some experience, and has been given a reward for uniquely beating the story. Yesiel falls to the floor panting, and he is clearly gassed out from all of that. His hand too shaky to even reach for his sword. He looks over at Scar's corpse, and the fact that this is reality sets in. He understands that this isn't a dream, he just experienced all of that for real, his first fight, his first blink, and his first murder. He looks a bit conflicted, but says he did it to survive. After a little rest, he stands up, saying it's time to leave this place, but realizes something. He says wait, and turns around to look at Scar's corpse. He starts digging through his pockets, saying realistically he has no money. But there is around 2 million credits. I guess millions aren't much over there. He looks back at the cliff, saying that this is the only real problem left. He steps to the edge, and starts to think about how to go about it. We hear some people across from it, asking if anyone is there, saying to come this way. He recognizes them as the group of mages who appear in the tutorial. They wave over at him, and he yells, saying he is there. They ask him if he is able to cross without there being a bridge. He says yes, he'll be heading over soon. One of the mages tell the rest to wait, since he said he'll be crossing. Another one says that for him to cross he'd have to be a third-class knight, asking how a boy could do that. He says that he isn't sure, but is surprised after seeing him blink across to one of the rocks. They are both stun-locked, as he does it yet again. Some of them see this display and wonder if it's a type of jumping magic. Someone from the back says it's blink, and they turn to reveal a girl saying that he is blinking across. One of them asks how it's a blink when he's able to control the distance and direction, asking how that would even be possible. Then he is surprised, as he sees two people behind Yeseol, and wonders if they are with him. But he quickly realizes that's not the case as they begin to cast offensive magic. The spell actually looks hella sick. It's like Pum's revolver from one of the other series on the channel. Yeseol sees it behind due to them warning him, and he uses blink to avoid the attack. He turns to see that the mages aren't giving up, and that this is turning dangerous. His cooldown is 3 seconds, so dodging all of their magic with that isn't possible. He has to find the next floating stone to use as a foothold. But with sixth sense he senses them casting another. This time it's a dark beam. He barely avoids it, losing some of his hair. But the platform beneath him starts to fall. He looks around saying all of the stones are too far, and says he just has to hope to land on one. He casts blink, and manages to latch on to one of the edges of the rock, saying that he survived somehow, but he spoke too soon as the next fire arrow is launched at him. As it gets close he says he's cooked, but some kind of blue spell comes in clutch, blowing the fire arrow away from him, completely evaporating the fire arrow. Yeseol is surprised, saying that it was an ice spear covered with lightning. And someone with 2 attributes in the tutorial is rare, and not only that, but they calculated the trajectory without wasting any mana. He wonders who is capable of such a thing, and looks at the mages, to see that it was the girl from earlier. The enemy magicians realize they are outclassed, and quickly turn, admitting their defeat. As they walk away Yeseol sighs out of relief, saying that it seems like he'll live. A bit later he makes it across, and sees the girl who saved him. He thanks her for doing it, and she says that she didn't do it for gratitude. He says okay, but starts saying her voice is hella cute, but says that approaching her would be hard. He looks over across the cliff, explaining how to others they just seem like bandits. But in reality, they are a part of the dark demon cult we talked about earlier. But that ends here, as he's in the territory of the mages. They won't be able to pursue him any longer. And that they don't even know who he is in the first place. A status window starts to fade in, saying it's episode 2, time to enroll in Stella Academy. Guess the translators had a stroke typing episode. He says this one shouldn't be too hard, but asks why the hell he has to go back to school at such an age. We see their carriage riding off, through some foggy terrain, and inside the back is Yeseol, who is slumped out, but is clearly having a nightmare of sorts. We see the real Yeseol as a kid tugging on his mother's clothing, saying that he's gonna grow up to be a mage. She smiles proudly, saying she believes in him. Then his parents worked hard and saved enough money to get him a book on magic. So he studied diligently to make his parents proud and happy. We see his mother covering him up after studying all night. Very wholesome. Then it cuts to her being surprised by the doctor telling her about Yeseol's monoleak syndrome. Yeseol says there is no way this is true. He wonders if these are Yeseol's memories, if they are his. He snaps out of it, and wakes up. With a headache, he looks outside to see that it is now morning. One of the other passengers say they were just about to wake him up, as they are about to arrive in Lizoicha, a smaller city near Arcanium. Their carriage comes to a halt, and the mages decide to take a break here. Yeseol starts stretching, and sees the girl who saved him staring at him. He finds it surprising, but she instantly turns around. And he says that is quite cold. But things are going well considering how worried he was. The timeline is closer to modern times rather than the Middle Ages. Inside of major cities they have trains, flying ships and warp gates, to make long-distance travel convenient. When they make it to Lizoicha they'll board a flying ship, which will take them to Arcanium, which is where the real episode begins. There are renowned magic towers as well as mage knight orders, and 5 renowned academies in Arcanium. The academy with the most powerful mages and most excellent students is Stella Academy, which means that it's full of geniuses and nobles from all over the world. He still doesn't know how Yeseol got admission in the first place. He says that he also forgot to check his skills. We get a more in-depth look at monoleakage syndrome, MLS, from now on. He says without sixth sense and detection acceleration he would be dead already. His physique is cursed as he cannot accumulate mana, and was a curse he happened to be born with. However, it allows him to detect mana around him with his sixth sense. It allowed him to sense any attacks coming toward him within a certain radius, of course. Detection acceleration allowed him to sense things as if time had been slowed down, so even the attacks that seem impossible he could deal with. It's a necessary skill for Yesiol since he can't use mana, but he can't use sixth sense for long, and it eats up his mental, so it has pretty heavy consequences after. Next up are his stats. He opens the tab. We see most of them are 1 star. He says that is actually quite decent starting stats. The original Yesiol had low sensitivity. So it seems like it took part of the stats he would have had, and put them into Yesiol. He explains how skills have levels, but stats are starred. The maximum stat level is 9 stars, but that is impossible to reach. He played for 10 years, and the highest he reached was 8 stars for stamina and sensitivity. But he decides to invest into sensitivity to boost sixth sense and his reaction speed, as he can raise most of his other stats through training. He says now the problem is the MLS. If he doesn't train it he won't survive for long, and he needs it to upgrade to Secrets of Nature physique. It'll be explained more later. The way to reinforce MLS is within Stella Academy. This means he has no choice but to go to Stella, if he wants to find the true ending and treat his syndrome. He doesn't want to go back to school, and he wished he had something to help. A window appears saying he has missed notifications. He wonders what it is, but gets told it's time to get going. He decides to check them later. The blue-haired girl watches him leave and it cuts to a flying ship. The announcement says they'll be leaving for Arcanium, so take a seat. Some really well-dressed people look over and see Yesiol, saying he looks like a lost kid, asking if he's never been on a flying ship before. They call him a country bumpkin, and click their tongue wondering why Stella has to let peasants in. The man says it's supposed to be the most renowned in the world, and they are sullying the waters with people like him. Yesiol looks at them, but pays it no mind and sighs, saying that kids are the same anywhere you go. They start to get annoyed, asking if he sighed at them. This angers the purple-haired one, and he barks saying to stop there. But the other boys are stun-locked. He wonders why everyone is so loud. Then turns to see a white-haired girl, and stutters saying Princess Bien. Yesiol turns and asks if he just said Bien. She is the princess of the Adalebet kingdom. She walks past everyone, and the purple-haired boy greets her. She glares at him, and he freezes up. Second-hand embarrassment from this one. She walks past Yesiol, and he says she's considered a villainess in this world. She is one of the main characters in the game. She and the main female protagonist always argue, and Bien dies in the end, regardless of what route you take. In some she is brutally murdered, in others she's bullied by the entire academy before being expelled. In one she goes through something so shameful, she never appears in front of the public again. As if the developers had personal resentment and wanted her to suffer. Yesiol says he knows she's popular among the male players since she's pretty. But he feels like she'll kill him if he talks to her. His stomach growls, and he says he should go eat. We see a lot of nice looking food, but he is devastated with only 1 can of something. He says this shit is all too overpriced. So he'll wait until they land. Another announcement comes over, saying it would like everyone to be aware that they are arriving in Arcanium in 10 minutes. So make your way to the first floor. He repeats the announcement and Yesiol smirks saying it's finally starting. And that this is his new reality, and it's time to do this. But then he jumps to being gloomy, saying it's good he resolved it. Honestly not sure if there was something that was skipped or not, left me a bit confused. He wonders if he will be able to survive in the academy, or rather will he be able to survive in this world. He looks out the window, then remembers the notifications he had to check. He opens them up, and it says the Constellation Project offers him a special reward. 1. A downgraded version of the items he used in the game. 2. A downgraded version of the skills he acquired in game, or 3. Just experience. He starts to think about which one to pick, and wonders if he could get a few specific items, but it says the item's quality is too high and will be severely downgraded. He asks for another called Hyperspace Blink. Since it's an advanced version of Blink it cannot be acquired. But he can enhance Blink slightly. He asks if he truly has to downgrade. The system says due to his lack of narrative power they aren't able to materialize fully. He wonders what it is, and it says the force that drives the progression of the story is called narrative power. If he continues to explore unknown branches of the story like yesterday, it will accumulate. So in short they can't give him anything late game worthy since he is a newbie. He asks about something called the Bulbul glasses. The system digs through, and says it can be provided. He decides to go with that then, and they appear in his hand. He says he can't believe the day would come when he is actually wearing this thing. It's an item that contains all of the information he's collected while playing the game. In Ether World, it was impossible to recall and read information about hunted monsters or acquired knowledge. So players developed various items to store info. And that he is one of those players too, he puts them on. It consumes mind power, but it remembers every single piece of knowledge he has seen. It has 2 abilities, folder and seal. He opens the folder, showing a whole list about game information. He looks at some of it, saying this is good enough. Since this is real life, there's no way for him to tell how much grinding he could do using the game system. But with these glasses he can at least regain half of his previous ability. We hear some students talking about a woman named Azel. He looks up to see the blue-haired girl who saved him. She is apparently the daughter of a trader named Dutch Malf. They ask how dare she show her face here. Yesiel doesn't recall the name, but looks through his glasses seeing that she is a fake heroine who dies later on. He says to explain it there is one thing he must point out, although the place he is in is a game called Ether World. The fact is that it's a game based on the original fantasy romance novel called Don't Love the Princess. And the novel is about Aziel who had lost her entire family. She grows by confronting the schemes of the villainous Bien. And eventually ends up with the male protagonist. In the end her revenge motif disappears and the male character protects her. It had a sad ending after receiving harsh feedback from its readers. He says even though the game is based on the novel, the story is completely different. In the game an original character named Flame was added and took the role of heroine. This character named Flame had a backstory. She came from the modern world, and enjoyed reading the novel, and was transported into this world. So unlike the novel, Aziel became the fake heroine of the game, while Flame took her spot. Despite many attempts from the players, it was said that she was unsavable. But he says none of this matters to him. He wonders if it's his imagination, saying he feels like he's seen her before. Okay, this main character has brain delay. How many ice lightning mages does he know? Someone had to say it. He decides it was just his imagination, and decides to hop off. Inside of Stella Academy, we see students everywhere and a man says as they are aware the dark demonic humans are the mages who embrace the otherworldly powers and transform into monsters. Even at this moment they continue their invasion by opening persona gates, or liberating ancient dungeons. Their destiny as mages is to protect the world from the forces of darkness. The students start to talk about how boring of a speech this is. The man says next up they will have the oath ceremony for the 4 students with the highest scores, and the freshman representative. He calls for the students to all come up onto the podium, and we see the 5 people he called forward. Yesiel says their faces are shining, and it's fitting for the main characters. However, the brightest one among them is obviously the representative Ma Yusong. He had the highest score overall. Yesiel says that's him. He is a character that is pretty much just him. He has a mana status of 9 stars, possessing the potential to close the realm of deities. He's a natural genius who can use all of the elements. Even if he can't reach the true ending, he wants to avoid any of the bad endings, so he has to get Yusong on his side. But he says that will be completely up to Flame, the other person from his world. He says it's up to how she acts. Since she's from his reality it might be good to get along with her. But things will get complicated if she considers him an enemy. He has the upper hand in terms of information. She is just a possessor from the novel, but he is a possessor from the game. Although his importance the story is even less than a shop NPC in a village. He also tells us how Flame has the ability to cleanse the dark demonic humans. But aside from that, she has the ability that lets her make those around her poor. Weird wording maybe. So being around her would affect him for sure. His role is to support the main characters from afar. And to not get involved with them as much as possible. The entrance ceremony is finally over and episode 2 has been completed. It jumps to show a wider view of Stella Academy then back to Yesiel inside of a lecture hall. He says it's been a while since he graduated university, so it feels weird to be a high schooler again. But still it doesn't feel bad since he has this little watch. It's the Stella Pocket Watch. That proves you are a student at the academy. If you have this you receive much better treatment and service than those with Magic Warrior licenses. He says he can't wait to use it. Their teacher enters, and he tells everyone to take their seats. As they will now begin exams, so put away all items other than writing supplies, and those with glasses will be examined prior. He says that Stella's academy curriculum is more rigorous than most Korean universities. You take an exam on your first day. It's called a class organization exam. Pretty much a class placement exam. The teacher says it's time to begin the exam. Yesiel looks down and says that he has no idea what it says. The class placement exam is unrelated to the entrance exam, that is notorious for its crazy difficulty. Students are assigned from F to S classes based on the exam. Of course, most playable characters are obviously in the S class. But Yeseol placed last among the students. He wonders if he could just hand in a blank page, or if he'd be expelled. He looks over to see Yusong, who yawns out of boredom. Yeseol says he expected no less, seeing his paper finished. And it's no wonder he is always bored. The nature of his character all wraps back to boredom. He was born in the strongest family in the world, and as he has the most genius brain and talent in the world, everything is too easy for him. Which is why, based on how the female lead acts, his disposition would be decided as good or evil. The dark demonic humans who work to bring the humans to ruin would obviously be very interested in Yusong. But his biggest issue is his family to begin with. He says looking at geniuses makes him compare himself even more. He wonders if he can use his glasses on this. He pulls them out, saying he's got nothing to lose. The professor walks by him asking what's with his glasses. And he said that if you were going to use them you needed to get them checked prior. He says oh yeah he did. The professor says he'll check them. He pours some mana into it and looks at it. Yeseol says if he gets caught he might be expelled. Then the window makes a sound, asking him if he would like to activate the glasses. He says no, and to stay asleep. The professor thinks about it, and gives it back, saying he can't feel mana from it. So to make sure to ask beforehand next time. Yeseol says if the original functions were working, that'd have been horrible. He turns on the glasses, and says he can actually see the answers. And that this is a jackpot. He wonders what'll happen if he gets first place. And he starts writing, saying he'll escape F class for sure, maybe even get a class. But the professor says the exam is over, and that he'll collect their papers. Yeseol is surprised, then the papers all get sent flying toward the professor. He says he only finished 3 questions. The professor starts to look at them. And Yeseol says he thought he'd escape F class, but he's doomed. But he looks up at the professor, who yells for him to give him his glasses. Yeseol does so, and the professor imbues mana into it again, saying there is no way. He tells a student to go bring Dr. Grayan over. Yeseol wonders what's wrong, saying he wrote the answers process clearly so he wouldn't be accused of cheating. And if he was caught or not. We see the professor asking Grayman what he thinks. He analyzes the glasses, saying the fact he solved the question is suspicious. The professor asks if he cheated, but Grayman says no. He can't feel any magic from the glasses or his items. So he definitely solved it with his own ability. Grayman says it's interesting, and we learn the professor's name is Lee Hanwol. Grayman tells him to apologize to the student. Hanwol quickly does so, apologizing to Yeseol. But of course he cheated, and would have been in trouble if it was turned on. He tells Hanwol to be careful in the future. It cuts back to another outside shot, then we see Hanwol's office. Inside he is going over some papers, and seems to be thinking about something. His colleague calls out to him, asking if he's grading the freshmen's exam papers. He tells her yes, and she says that she heard there are many interesting freshmen this year. She is a part of the Council of Elders. She is named Adeltamen. Hanwol says yeah, apparently so. From the most renowned family of fire magic. Hong Bian is attending, the crown prince of the Scalvan Empire. Jeremy has surpassed his older brothers purely from his magical talent alone. From the world's greatest magic tower, the Full Moon Tower, Hei Wonryong, the successor. She says that she's heard it was tough to set the exam questions high enough due to how many talented students there were. Hanwol says that he is glad she's enjoying it. But as she mentioned, the exam had 3 questions at the start that were meant to be too hard for students to solve normally. The intention behind the 3 questions was that if you can't solve it you should just skip it. Second, how would you solve a problem that didn't appear in any of the books they studied so far? The era of magic where memorization and theory prevailed is now over. Now is the age of combat using quick judgment and creative thinking. But the questions were not meant to be solved. Over 1,000 of the 1,141 students let them blank. On the other hand, the 100 students who attempted them most couldn't get a single answer semi-correct. Among the new students, only 3 of them got all 3 correct. Ma Yusong, the prodigy of the century, and Flame, who got special admission from the principal. Then there is Yeseol. Yusong and Flame are geniuses, but he's sure Yeseol had the lowest admission score. He didn't expect him to solve them at all. Especially when he didn't solve any other problem. Adele says she was wondering why he's so interested in the score, saying there must be one that makes no sense. She says it makes sense though, as countless formulas and equations failed to solve them. So what would a student know? Hanwol asks her if she thinks the student might be a genius. She says it might be a coincidence. She leaves and he lets out a sigh. We learn that the principal only let Yeseol in due to his control over Blink. Hanwol says it must be that the students who are specially granted admission are just different. He smiles, saying a mage who specializes in Blink, he'll find out soon enough if it was coincidence or not. We see students all talking, and they mention the class assignment was posted on the bulletin board. The students wonder what they'll get. One of them says his mom said not to come home if he isn't in a class. Yeseol just can't believe he has to check it in person, saying in game he could see it with one click. He makes it to the board, and a student notices him, saying that he's Beck Yeseol, the one who got a 0 on the magic application section of the entrance exam. They openly mock him, asking how he got into Stella, saying they are questioning the school's standards now. Yeseol says he doesn't care about their yapping, he just wants to see what class he got placed in. He looks up and his name isn't in the F class. He wonders if he failed for only answering 3 questions. Some other students say his name shouldn't be here, and that there should be a mistake here. They start to talk about other students and how they ranked in the double digits and were placed in the A class. Yeseol wonders what they are talking about this time, and goes over to check it out and is surprised to see that his name is inside of the S class. He says this can't be, and that only the most special students are placed in S class. It's different from the other grades with multiple classes per grade. Class S only has 41 students, and only one class. He says this is a mistake, and it's low-key stressing him out. He says now he's forced to deal with the main characters. Getting involved with the protagonist will threaten his already short life, but he can't change his class soon. So he'll keep a low profile instead. He says he'll just manage for now. We see Flame looking at him, and she's got something on her mind. It cuts to a room where we see Bien being slapped by what I assume is her mother. Asking how she got 3 questions wrong, even Azel only got 2 wrong. She is the fire element professor, named Hong Yil, definitely her mother. She says she wasn't able to answer them, that even insects got correct, which means she is lower than even insects. So she should think of herself as a bug and do it again. She asks her if she understands. In a broken tone, Bien says yes. Her mother looks down on her, and lets out a sigh, saying to listen to her, she can't afford to be like her. She was chased out of the kingdom and is holding on to a stupid professor's job. And that she cannot become the shame of a kingdom. She says that she needs to become better than her sister. Yil begins to smile, asking again if she understands. Again Bien says yes, but in reality she doesn't understand. She just lives the way she was taught, and is only as good as she's been taught. She begins to cry, asking why she has to be tormented like this. Poor girl. It cuts again to the S class. We see the students all sitting down and Yeseol says he is screwed, and most people here are weirdos. Again he quickly overhears the students asking how he's here. Apparently some of their parents protested that he is in their class, but the principal assured that he was fit for the class. Yeseol laughs, saying it looks like he is an outcast. But they've been hard working since they were young. He'd be frustrated too if a known idiot like him was in the same class. But their classes can change based on performance. But there are very few cases of someone being demoted, and there will be more people that move from A class to S class later on. But he is still amazed that the game characters are all in front of him. And most students here will become famous worldwide. And 5 of them may betray the magic world. Yusong is one of them. He looks over at Flame, saying if she could stop that it would be nice. Hanwol enters, telling them all to stop talking. Yusin is surprised, and Hanwol says it's nice to meet them all. He's sure some know who he is, but he'll formally introduce himself. He is their professor, Lee Hanwol. Some of them talk about how the amount of dark demonic humans he's hunted has reached 4 digits. He's a 7th class magic warrior. He is really on a whole other level. He tells them to settle down. He says it seems like there's a lot of talent here, and a very unique student too. As they all know, this place is to foster combat mages. As magic warriors they'll experience a rigorous education over 3 years. He doesn't expect any of them to follow, but he'd like them all to show their best during this time frame. He asks if there are any questions. Nobody says anything, and he says good. It's time to start the class. Bien enters the room, with a visible injury on her face. Yusong is surprised that Bien, more than anyone, is late. She walks to Hanwol, and Yusong wonders what happened. He puts his glasses on to check it out. He doesn't see anything that stands out, besides the guaranteed to die thing. But says she is fated to die because of either Flame or Azel. Which of course is why she is the fated villainess, not because she is evil. He'd like to save her, but he isn't in a position to help anyone. Hanwol tells her to take her seat. Yusong sighs, saying he feels bad but needs to keep his distance. But he is confused, as she walks straight up to him and looks down at him. He wonders what she's doing, and she takes the seat right beside him. He asks what this is, saying this doesn't feel good. Hanwol says before they start the class, they'll have their staff selection for what they'll be using while in school. The S and A class will have their staff selections together. Yusong says this is a bit annoying, but he is looking forward to it. There are two big events in Stella Academy. One of them is the familiar contract ceremony. The other is the staff succession ceremony. Like the premier academy that Stella Academy is, the ceremony is very special. They go to a different area, and Hanwol asks if everyone is here. He says the staffs ranging from the lowest class to the high middle class are prepared here. All they have to do is go to a staff they like and grab it. The process of switching one on is complicated. Yeseol says they aren't actually the ones picking their staffs. In Ether World, the staffs only respond to those they deem worthy of commanding them, causing a resonance effect. It basically means that you can't use the high-level ones just because you want to. He stops and looks around, wondering which one he should choose. If it was before, he'd pick one worthy of F class, but now he has to choose carefully as he is in S class. He says the staff that fits his position the best is the wand. He explains how staffs are divided into two classes, short form and long form. Short forms are usually wielded by the knight class, who spam magic quickly, while long form is generally for those who focus on single spells with long cast times. The others start to gossip about what Yeseol is going to pick, saying surely he has no problem with the resonance effect. He still doesn't care since they are kids, and says they can think whatever they want. Someone calls out to him, and Yeseol is surprised, and asks him who he is. He says his name is Yuzlek. The students mentioned him earlier. Yeseol says he's never heard of him before though. Yuzlek asks him which one he plans to pick. He says he'll just pick anything. Yuzlek mocks him, saying to pick a staff that suits a commoner. And he shouldn't cause trouble for the professors. Yeseol doesn't want to talk to him anymore, and says that he shouldn't either. Yuzlek gets embarrassed, and shouts at him, asking if he's picking a fight. Yeseol sighs, saying this is annoying, and equips his glasses, which says that Yuzlek is a third-rate bully. He puts it up asking why there is so little info, and realizes that this dude is just a damn extra. Yuzlek points out to the one he plans to pick, saying to watch carefully. Yeseol looks at it and recognizes it as the Edmuri Adamiri, which should be the highest one here. A high middle-class staff is usually for pro-magic warriors. On the other hand, no matter how talented you are, middle-low class is usually the limit for students. Especially since even the professional magic warriors are barely able to grab a hold of the middle-low class staffs. There is another high middle-class staff here other than the Adamiri. It isn't really here for anyone to pick. Its sole purpose is to be a flex. Hanwol tells them all to stand in front of the staffs they like. We see Wonryong with his, along with Jeremy, and even Bian. Then a massive resonance is seen from them all as they all got accepted by the middle-class staff. The students say that's crazy, as certified magicians are only capable of wielding middle-class staffs. Yuzlek starts to feel outdone. He says he'll show them what he can do. They all see Yuzlek approaching his staff, and ask if he's really trying to go for such a high-rank staff. He stretches his hand out, saying this is what true talent looks like. He grips it and a bright light is seen around the room. Yeseol says he expected as much. He failed to resonate. We see him on the floor in pain, and the students say someone should call a professor. And they guess the high middle-class staffs are going to be impossible. Yeseol says it is best for them to give up, because only one person here will get one. Yusong approaches it while humming a tune. He looks down at it, with a smirk on his face. The other students wonder if he's going to try and get it, saying they doubt even he could handle the Edmuri Adamiri. He grips onto it, and a really bright rainbowish light can be seen. Yeseol gets flashbanged, but once it's better we can see that he is smirking, as he was able to resonate with the staff. They say there's no way a student is capable of taking that, asking how it's possible a student can use a high middle staff. Yeseol sighs, saying he expected this. Now other people will understand how talented he is. He looks over at Yeseol, who wonders if he's looking at him. And he smiles at him. Yeseol wonders if he's lost his mind, saying that Flame also owned another high mid staff called Teravan. However, this might be where the route splits, if Flame manages to get it. Yusong will take interest in her due to her genius, opening the Yusong route. But if she picked another staff, it would be an entirely different route. He needs to use flame to bring Yusong onto their side. He finally finds her, and sees her approaching the staff. He says that is where Teravan is. He watches, wondering what she is going to do. She walks toward it, and he says that she needs to take this, then Yusong will take interest in flame. And there's a chance at a good ending, but she just ignores it. Which surprises him, and he wonders why he isn't interested in Teravan. He wonders if she doesn't know about it, saying maybe she's lacking info. But that is bad. He says she should be able to resonate with any staff since she's the female lead. But she might pick a weird one, and they could end up losing out on the good routes. He realizes he has no choice but to push Teravan onto her. He begins to activate Blink, saying he has to do this. He leaps toward her, and she turns surprised, asking when the hell he got behind her. He asks which staff she'll pick. She asks why he wants to know. He simply says she just looked a little lost. She tells him it's none of his business, and turns away. He tells her to wait, and says something is strange. Flame is meant to be friendly with everyone since she is a very social person. But she is being really cold. He can't give up since his life depends on this. He says he really wants to help her pick one. She says to mind his own business. He tries to say there's a perfect staff for her, but she gets pissed, asking what the hell he knows about staffs. Yoon-seol wonders where he did something wrong, asking if she hates extras. He says he heard a lot about her. He says surely she could resonate with this one, and she asks if he means the Teravan. He says yes, that one, then hears a weird ringing sound. He wonders what the noise is and flinches as Teravan flies into his hand. He slowly opens his eyes, saying that scared him. But is surprised to find it in his hand. He starts to panic since he was trying to give it to Flame. He says oh, and turns sweating nervously. She doesn't say anything, so he calls out to her. She in a very happy tone asks him why. He tells her it's nothing, realizing that he is screwed. It cuts to later, and Flame is walking with other students, and they begin to gossip about how 2 students grabbed some high mid-class staffs. They are surprised, saying historically only 5 people have grabbed them, and 2 people of the same year do it now. But strangely one of the students can only use Blink. They say that it's a best magic, even though it's rare, it's straight ass. They start to wonder if something went wrong, but Flame is deep in thought. It cuts to the self-study hall, and she is walking down the hallway sighing that it's quiet now. And that no matter where she went, she heard them talking about the 2 students getting the staffs. But she cannot understand it. She couldn't believe he grabbed Teravan. She read the novel 3 times before being a possessor, and Yeseol never appeared once. And that not anyone could resonate with Teravan, but he did it so easily. She took it like he was trying to show off to her, but decides it's pointless to think about now. Some other students call out to her, asking if she plans to study. She turns and quickly smiles, asking if these kids think she's a nerd or something. They say she is always here studying. She says it isn't like that. Another one asks why she calls them kids when they are all the same age. She says it's a habit, as she was treated older where she lived. She nervously laughs, saying she can't act like a kid. They ask if she plans to study alone, and she recognizes the girl as Jackie, wondering why her hairstyle is the same as hers. She says not alone, as a special supplementary meeting is coming up, so she is going to attend that. But that she needs to head off. She says that they can all eat next time. As she walks away she sighs, saying girls at this age are hard to deal with, or well, all students are. She bumps into someone, and they call out her name. She looks up to see that it's Wonryong. He asks if she's fine, and she says yes. But he notices her expression seems off, asking if she's okay. She wonders if he's worried, but says that she's fine. He asks if she's going to self-study. She says yes and asks if he is going to the S-rank training hall. He says training is important. She says he is unnecessarily sincere, and he says that's the pot calling the kettle black. He stares at her, and she wonders what he wants. Then he smirks, and adjusts her hair bow. Then says he'll see her later. She watches him leave and says that's bland. She then turns to see Jackie watching her from afar. She waves at her, but she runs off. She decides it doesn't matter, as it isn't the time for this. She makes it to the special supplementary meeting, and says according to the novel Azel and Bian will be here. It'll be important to watch the female lead and the villainous face off. She opens the door, and enters to see Yusong acting friendly with Yeseol, who doesn't want any part of it. She sees the host, an A-rank named Kyle, and how he is taken aback. She says that he probably didn't expect so many S-class students to be participating, and finds it odd that even Suyong is here. He is the male lead of the world, and is interested in Yeseol for some reason. She says it's no coincidence. Yeseol didn't solve anything other than the 3 major questions too. She wonders if he knew from the start if you answered those that you could enter the S class. Poor girl is so wrong. She says if he really knew this beforehand, then he is dangerous. Yeseol sighs, saying he wishes someone would take Yusong off his hands. He asks Yeseol why he came here, saying he doesn't need to listen to this stuff. Asking if there is a special reason, of course it's because his grades are ass. He looks at Yusong, wondering why he is so interested in him. Kyle says that it's time to start, they will be looking over the placement exam problems. And that they all surely know about the 3 questions from hell at the start. He wanted to expand his influence by teaching dumb nobles. He says he managed to solve one of them. He spots Yeseol saying he still might be able to spread his influence, since he placed the lowest. He smirks, saying he'll show him that he is better than he is. Kyle starts to put the question on the board, saying he'll show them how he solved it, and that it's a trap, and how it leads you to an error. Yusong is smirking, and asks Yeseol if he thinks he is right. He sees that Yusong is really waiting for his reply, and has no idea what Kyle is even talking about with the 3 questions from hell. Our main character is smooth-brained. Yeseol decides to just be honest, and says he doesn't know, causing Kyle to stop writing. The students start to talk about him and ask if he's saying that Kyle is wrong. Yeseol panics and wonders why everyone is looking at him like this. Kyle breaks the chalk, asking if he's doing it wrong in a condescending tone, and asks Yeseol to come down and solve it himself. Yeseol wonders why he would do that, and Yusong encourages him. He wanted this from the start. Yeseol says whatever, and heads down saying he'll get it over with. Flame and Bien both watch him and he heads up to the board, and puts on his glasses. Saying the 3 questions from hell is an overstatement. It's just a pun quiz. He gives an example of if a mage cast a spell saying Dear Earth, shed tears. And there is double the amount of dirt than before. Why would that be? He says the answer is simple. If dirt cries, it is in a state of decomposure. He says it's ridiculous to him too and wonders who came up with this. But says that Kyle solved the problem like it was a math problem. His method is definitely wrong, but he got the right answer due to luck. But if there was another problem similar, he would get it wrong. He says he can't tell him the proper way to solve it, but he can show him where he is wrong. He says the problem mentioned earth, but what if it were wind or water? Asking if his method would still work then, Kyle says he'd use a different method then. Yeseol says he'd have to do it all differently then. And it was pure luck he got the answer right, not because it's what the test maker intended him to do. Kyle tries to answer, but can't find the words, and admits that he's right. I like him for that. He continues talking to Kyle, who takes notes, and so do the other students. Flame is genuinely surprised, asking how it's possible that the other students are writing down what he's saying. She says that Azel and Bien should have been arguing, but now are distracted with the problem. Flame is worried that this isn't okay. Yusong waves bye to Yeseol as he is leaving. Yeseol waves back, but can't believe he got involved with Yusong, and wants it to be over. He lets out a sigh, saying it's because of Teravan. But he can't even use it right now. He can't understand why Yusong came to him. There weren't any instances of characters using it besides Flame. He sees Bien waiting for someone, and wonders what she's doing. He decides to just quickly pass, but she calls out to him, which catches him off guard. She says she has something to ask him. He asks her what it is. She asks him why he didn't explain the solution earlier. But it's not that he didn't, it's that he couldn't. He says she's misunderstanding, he just didn't have anything to say. She thinks about it, then says she understands. He didn't want to announce his solution in that kind of place, right? Yeseol says that isn't it either, but she says she will compensate him. He asks what she means. She says she'll compensate him fairly, so whatever he has in his mind, he needs to explain it to her. He's even more confused now. At the library we see them sitting at a table, with her exam papers in front of him. He says that he doesn't understand why she needs to know these 3 questions. She says she has her reasons. He says alright, and that these are the only 3 she got wrong. Asking if she is embarrassed getting help from someone who got all the other ones wrong. She says not at all. The only embarrassing thing is not knowing how to solve the problems. He says she sure is a model student, but asks why she wanted him specifically. He says she is a princess, so surely she has friends she could have asked. She says out of the 1,141 freshmen there were only 3 people who got the 3 questions right. He asks her what she means. She tells him how they were meant to be unsolvable. But he, Yusong, and Flame all got them right. So now she is in a tough spot. He jumps out of his chair asking how they were meant to be unsolvable. She asks if he couldn't tell from actually solving them. He sits back down saying that is insane, and he understands why he is in S class, and why Flame acted the way she did. He says he doesn't know all of the details about the game's plot. He didn't even know there were trick questions like this, but that Flame is different. She read the novel, so even if she doesn't know the game's story, she must know the settings of the story, such as the 3 questions. And now that an extra who wasn't in the original story butted in, it makes so much sense. He facepalms, and asks Home what's wrong, and he says not to worry about it. He looks up at her, reminding her that she will listen to a request of his as thanks for helping him solve the question. He tells her his request is simple, he wants to alter his staff into a magic sword. The blacksmiths of her kingdom should surely be able to do it, she says that only low-level mercenaries use those. He tells her that it fits his style. He doesn't want to explain to her that he can't use magic, but asks if she can do it or not. She thinks about it and says sure, that should be pretty easy. He says good, and he'll tell her the way to solve the first question. He says it only needs a change of perspective. She repeats what he said like it's a question, and he explains to us how her weakness is the fact she is too by the book, and that she is stuck in a rut. But she only understands this in her second year after losing to Flame. He can't give her any important insights right now, but he can push her in the right direction. He asks her if she happens to knows what a nonsense quiz is. She thinks about it, and says she thinks she's heard about it. He says he'll give an example, what's between a knee and a knee? She thinks about it, saying the back of the knee, and he says nope. The answer is and, she asks how. He repeats the question to her, and she seems dejected. Then starts to glare at him angrily. He says to calm down and look at the question. It has formulas and techniques she doesn't know, which means it has to be solved by using creativity. Asking if it's possible to memorize creativity. She looks off the side, and says no. He smiles, saying of course knowing spells and techniques is important. But for a mage the most important thing, is to look at the world beyond the boundaries of thought, as magic can grow from the smallest of changes. But she thinks about things too literally, and how not everything is based on memorization. He says she is better than him at analytical thinking and judgment, but she lacks the most important quality for a mage, which is creativity. Her hand starts to shake, and the aura around her becomes tense. He says that she looks way too serious. He nervously asks her if she understood what he's saying, even though it is kinda complicated. She says of course she did. He nervously smiles, thinking to himself that he has no idea what he's saying anymore. He says he'll test, and asks her what the man said to the horse while putting him to bed. She thinks about it. He repeats the question. She says she doesn't know, and he says the answer is that it's past your bedtime. He asks why normal beds don't work. She doesn't know, and he says because they are always lying down on the job. He keeps asking her these questions, over and over, but she doesn't get it. She starts to shake a bit, and you can tell she is trying her best to learn it. He says he has an easier one, asking her what the cloud said to the ocean when it was raining. She starts to think about it. And he starts praying that she understands. She says she is getting a bit emotional. He is surprised, and tells her she got it right. She looks really happy with herself. He says it's his first time seeing her smile. He says as expected of a princess her creativity is on a different level. She coughs, asking for the next one. He laughs, and they keep going. Later that night, we see Yesiol walking and he looks exhausted. He says he spent 3 hours of pun questions with her. He didn't expect her to believe what he said. He says that she is undoubtedly an excellent magician with a sharp mind, and he feels guilty for exploiting this. But he needs Terravan to be modified into a magic sword. But it's not like he can do anything about what he's already done. He says he needs to quickly buy his books for class. He looks around, saying he thought for sure it was around here. Then spots an older building out of the corner of his eye. Inside we see cobwebs on the bookshelves, and he says this place is a little grotty. But he knows this bookstore owner has a habit of acting like he is asleep while watching the customers. In this decrepit bookstore, the study notes of Maya are here. The top student who graduated from the academy over 10 years ago is hidden here. In game it only took a press of a button. In real life you need to read the textbook for the major. And depending which textbook you use, the rate at which your grade increases is different. In the beginning he bought textbooks from famous stores, but found out later that there were good textbooks hidden in plain sight. If he were to take a magical engineering class while holding onto the study notes of Maya, he would be guaranteed a perfect grade. But just wearing the bulbul glasses would get him decent grades. He spots it out of the corner of his eye, saying here it is. He goes to reach for it, but so does someone else. He looks over to see Azel, not sure how he didn't notice her earlier. She's surprised he knows who she is. He says of course as she is famous. She says she recognizes him from the supplementary group. He is surprised she doesn't remember meeting him before the academy, but he didn't even remember it either. She says she enjoyed the debate, and was disappointed that he couldn't finish it. She walks off saying it was nice to meet him. He says he is glad she didn't take the book, but wonders why she is even here. We see her start taking book after book and he says that the students who come here are usually poor like him. As someone from a fallen family she had no choice but to come here. He says her father was probably killed by dark demonic humans, and it's sad a princess like us has to come to a used bookstore, but is still worried about the prices due to a lack of money. In the novel she faced a bad ending too. She died before Flame even became the main character, and she is one of the most unfortunate characters in the game. He puts some books on the counter, asking for her to give him these. He looks over at Azel and asks what she's looking at. She's about to call him the R word, but changes to saying the topics seem interesting. He says there's no way she was about to insult him. He asks like what, and she asks why he's even reading topics about advanced sealing theory. As it's an ancient magic involving the use of an item. But since magical engineering and alchemy are things, it's a skill that is rarely used. He says it's true the subject has little use, and she says that at least he knows. But he says that's why he is taking it. She asks what he means. He says that everyone thinks like she does, so it's an easy class to get better grades in. He says he'll be going first, just leaving her confused. He says just as Azel said, not many are willing to take the class of theory sealing, but it means he can spend less time on it and still get great grades. So he won't be having any issues this semester. The next day, we see Azel walking to her class, saying the class on nihility should be easy to get good grades in. But sees there are a lot of people in here, and they all start to think about it. She sighs, saying it can't be helped, she has to do her best. The class ends, and while everyone is leaving, Azel is deep in thought, and sighs saying this is troubling and will be hard to get a scholarship. Her stomach starts to growl, and she says she needs to eat. As she's walking to the cafeteria, she passes an open door and spots Yesiol sitting inside, wondering what he's doing. She sees a lecturer and that there are barely any students, and that they all have pretty bad grades. She says the lecture might be in danger of getting cancelled. But she starts to think about it, saying if she signs up for this class she can raise her grades without putting much time into it. And if she uses the time she saves to study for other classes she can earn more scholarship money. She wonders if this is why Yesiol picked it, because the subject was easy, and wonders if all of his classes have been planned to be easy. But decides there's no way, and wonders what she is thinking. Saying she's sure it is a coincidence, it cuts back to Yesiol inside of the classroom, while his lecturer goes on about the origin of magic. The professor is named Layden. He explains how the mage in white taught the elves nature magic, the dwarves matter magic and humans elemental magic. Then he transcended to the heavens. After a bit, Yesiol asks how he's gonna deal with this for 3 years, and that going through school at this age is torture. He sighs, saying the lecture is truthfully important, as it might give him clues to the true ending. But he could be wrong as it's just a guess. Then he looks over to his right, wondering why Azel is in this class. He doesn't remember any main characters taking it. But not that it matters to him. Layden says that humanity didn't stop at elemental magic. They began to travel the world stealing magic from even species, and even then weren't satisfied. But there wasn't more magic for them to learn. The founding mage left behind the 12 divine moons and disappeared. Remember, the black dragon was the 13th moon. He asks if anyone knows about the 12 divine moons. Aziel says that they are guardians who protect the power of the continent, and they were scattered throughout the continent carrying out their duties until 1,000 years ago. Layden says that's right, they had their own special powers. For example, the moon that symbolized summer, the 6th moon of the red summer, wielded a red flame, and is said that its flames never died out. If you go into the deep sea of Alamanca you can still see the flames. So if anyone is curious they can take a look. He wonders if that's meant to be a joke. Since if a living being entered the king of the sea's domain they would die right away. Layden shows another example saying that the Levian's coast is a great whirlpool in the middle of the ocean, that has been frozen solid by the 12th moon of the blue winter. Each divine moon has their own unique powers, and a miracle is set to occur if they were all together. One of the students asks what the miracle is, and Layden says that nobody actually knows. as they fell asleep 1,000 years ago. Yeseol says he met some of the divine moons in the game, but it was only 5 of them through events. That was only possible because he gathered information from other players in the community. There weren't any other players who met more than he did. He says if his assumptions are correct, then bringing them all together is related to the true ending. He says he only managed to meet 5 of them after risking his life multiple times. But he has no other choice if he wants to witness the true ending. We see a fire attack towards a dummy, as Yil is saying that strength does not mean everything. As no matter how strong the attack is, if it cannot land, it is meaningless. She walks around while everyone practicing their fire spells. She sees a powerful attack flying in, causing a massive explosion. But is surprised as when the smoke settles from around the target dummy, it is uninjured, showing that it missed. She looks annoyed, and says that is terrible, as it was Bien who cast the attack, which we know from her history with her mother is bad. It cuts to Bien sitting down, and that she looks sad, saying she showed her mother a sorry sight again. And that she must be disappointed. Someone calls out to her, and she turns to see a girl with red hair. She asks if she is okay, and says that Bien is amazing. It was the same magic as her, but it was way stronger than her own. Bien asks why it matters when she couldn't even aim properly. The girl says that her magic was incredible, and that it was super cool. She says that she's been hearing about her since she was young. Bien says her name is Shoang. She thinks at least, she remembers hearing about her, and that she is a genius of the fire attribute. Bien says she thought that she must be nothing compared to her magic. But tells her it must be nice to have such high accuracy. Shoang says if Bien practices more she won't even be comparable to her. Bien says enough with this, but that talking to her has made her feel better. She tells her goodbye, and leaves. Shoang's happy demeanor clearly shifts to a serious one. It jumps to a different building, and inside we see Bien sighing. Someone calls out to her, and we see a girl waiting by a hot cup of tea. She is Bien's exclusive guard Ye Taran. Taran tells her she prepared a drink and some ginseng candy. She says for the staff remodeling commission she asked about, the staff is good, so they said a top-grade magic sword would be made. Bien asks and Taran says they are questioning something. She asks her what, and Taran says that she heard that the staff will continuously suck in the user's mana. Bien says that it sounds like a dark demonic tool. Taran says it's a bit different from that, and it's consistently resonating with nature energy. Bien says that sounds horrible, asking why such a garbage staff is middle-high class. Taran says that is exactly why it is one. Bien asks what she means. She says that the original ability would strengthen the user's mana, making it a high class or higher. But because it just sucks in mana, it was downscaled to middle-high. Bien jumps up surprised by this, asking how a student can wield that. Taran says she is confused about it too. Bien says that she knows that it wasn't there for them to resonate with in the first place. But she doesn't think anyone would use it to begin with, unless they had a ton of mana. She says she doesn't understand, but surely Yeseol will figure it out. She takes a sip of her tea, saying that he sure is unique. It cuts a few days later to the official start of the semester. We see a teacher giving a lecture, and Yeseol listening to him explain how attack magic needs to be manipulated in more detail than other types of magic. Which is why mana orbitology is mandatory. The professor's name is Carlim. And today onward for their mock battles, they'll be learning orbitology with a focus on shooting and target. He starts to draw on the board, saying that they will discuss the orbital formula. It mentions using water-type magic, and the students are all kind of iffy about it. Saying this is only answerable for water majors. Yeseol yawns, saying this shit is mad boring, wondering why these classes are harder than during his university days. The teacher sees him clearly bored, and gets him to stand up and solve it for the rest of the class. Yeseol solves it hella quickly, leaving the teacher stunned, saying he did that much easier than he thought. He asks him if he's a water attribute major. Yeseol says nope. Carlim says alright, moving on then. Azel is curious about this all. It cuts to Yeseol walking out of the classroom later, and Azel calls out to him. He turns to see her holding her book, and she says that she has a question for him. He is surprised, asking her what she needs to ask. She says that she's figured out from watching him that unrelated to his grades he is quite smart, even compared to the top rankers. She confirmed it due to the question's difficulty, as it was at a level even professors would struggle. Even if you say that Stella is where geniuses are common, what's the deal with Yeseol? She at first was in denial, but now she is certain that he has a course registration strategy. And that if that's the case, she needs to know. So she asks his next class, is caught off guard. asking if she is interested in him or something. She gets annoyed saying that's gross. He wonder what he's even doing, and asks why she's curious. She says that she did research on the classes he is taking, and it looks like they are all ones he can easily get good grades. So asks where he learned his strategy from. He tells her that he didn't learn anything, it is just a coincidence. And if that is all, then he will be heading out. She tells him to wait, but he doesn't. She realizes she said it too quietly, and decides to try again. She tells him to please wait, and he asks what she needs, saying that she can learn that kind of thing from someone else, there are other smart people. Or to keep following what he's doing herself. She says but anyone who takes Divine Moon Studies gets an A+, so it won't matter if she takes it. But if she registers for his other classes it could impact his grades negatively. He understands that she needs the scholarship or else it's Joe over for her, but even in this situation she is concerned about others' grades. He says even if she is annoying, she is still the female lead. She asks if he can at least recommended her one easy class and makes puppy dog eyes. He asks if she thinks her looks will convince him. She says that usually when she looks at her face it makes her stress go away. He fades out saying she isn't real. She laughs saying it was just a joke, and she prepared some compensation. He asks what it is, and wonders why all of these kids love to offer compensation. She asks if he knows about the ghost story of the 7th tower. He says he does, and she says most people don't know about it. Since it's an abandoned building that disappeared, there are a lot of barriers that prevent people from going to. He tells her to wait, and she asks why and if everyone is okay. He says he is going to go insane, since this is a lot of good info. Since with this Flame can increase her affection with the male protagonist. And the reason he is bringing up Flame is because if Azel knew it as the main heroine, and it must be something she only told the male protagonist, and not an extra like himself. He tells her that it's scary and he doesn't want to hear it, as it isn't interesting. She asks if he's afraid of ghosts at such an age, he says fine he'll tell her for free. She is confused on why he changed his mind, he tells her that it's up to him in the end. He's fine with this, since it is enough that Azel sincerely wants to give him something. He says it isn't related to grades, but it will be super useful to her, just take Meditation Journey into the Abyss, as her liberal arts class. She asks him if he's into cultivation by chance. He tells her not at all, and wonders how to explain it. He says his master was in a bishop position like her, and through meditation she was able to raise her magic power. She is surprised it was just through meditation. In reality this isn't known yet, but for bishops who wield large-scale destruction magic, meditation is quite important, since precise casting somewhat comes from formulas and equations. But ultimately comes from their mind, which controls mana. He says he doesn't tell people, but she's an exception since she's cute, but she says he just called her ugly earlier. She smiles a bit, thanking him saying it's a shame it's not a class that can help her grades, but she'll do it anyway. She smiles and nods as she leaves. As she goes he says he actually told her. It does scare him a little to think about how this could change the future. But if he just leaves her be out of fear, she will die a tragic death in this life as well. He says that it would be nice if meditation could be helpful for her. Then is surprised, saying now he thinks about it he's a mage too, so why hasn't he trained yet? He says that Yesiol in game was constantly training himself, which allows him to awaken his magic revelation physique and to grow immensely. In game you gain experience with the push of a button, but now he has to do it directly. And that it's been quiet lately and he hasn't been able to gain experience. He smirks saying he is grateful to Azel. It cuts to him walking around his dorm saying that it's quite large. Inside of Stella all students live in dorms. The dormitory was supposed to be extra content in game that lets you decorate your room for fun. But for Yesiol it's basically his only home since his village burnt down. The dorms are divided according to the class you are in. The size of the room is the same, but the number of people assigned to the rooms differ based on class. Of course the S classes get the highest floors to themselves. He sighs saying he guesses he'll start, and he begins to meditate. He says stats are all that matter. Since this is reality he needs to get used to this body. In game Yesiol was a genius who manifested sword aura by utilizing the fact that mana is endlessly circulating in and out of him. Nobody paid any attention to him, so nobody knew. But he is a genius swordmaster who was the only one in the world to reach the pinnacle of swordsmanship. He says he needs to walk down that path once more. He says breathing is what dictates the flow of the mana in his body. If he slowly increases the amount of mana with each breath it'll be enough to take it all at once. Skills don't level up with just experience, you need to keep using the skill to level it up. So all you have to do is train. As time goes by, we see it's bright outside. He has a thin aura around him. Then he snaps out of it, saying that this is the same sensation that Yeseol must have felt. As someone who accepted the MLS at a young age, his skills begin to level up from his meditation. And he screams alright. He says he's one step closer to his goal, and will find the true ending no matter what. It cuts to a grassy field. And Flame explains that the grass and wind are artificially created with magic. The Stelladome is a king of pocket dimension that's set up on the campus. It allows for you to freely manipulate the size dimension and its features. All types of events are held there, as well as mock dungeon and gate runs, and monster training. We see all of the students sitting there, and Flame says there's a total of 141 people here. We see her in the back. She explains how there's 50 from Class A1 and A2, and 40 from the S class, and if it was like the novel there'd only be 39 from the S class. She expected it to be 40 including her, but now there are 2 additions. She wonders where the hell Yeseol came from. In the novel there were meant to be 1,140 students, and with her addition it became 1,141. Which means he is in the original novel too. She says she'll figure things out slowly, as she is the only one who knows the novel after all. She says the lessons will be starting soon. She hears people talking to Jeremy about his registration. He says he is done with his, and they joined the soft magic research because of him. He smiles at them saying he can't wait to have fun with them all. Flame sees this from afar. She says that Prince Jeremy in the novel was obsessed with Azel but was rejected by her, leading him to become a villain. He looks kind, but his actions are all calculated, and she plans to avoid him. He sees her out of the corner of his eye, then smiles and waves at her. She says he sure is good looking, and she understands why so many people kiss his ass. Jeremy's clique is the most conspicuous in the school. She turns saying she has to get it together, since this is her reality now. He watches her leave, and smirks while saying her name. Hanwha appears, telling them all it's time to begin training, and he needs to know their skill levels in order to teach them properly. Hanwha says he'll direct the training, and if they don't like it, then he doesn't care. As they already know, the professors have the right to take away and add points. He says it's time to explain training now. He says that it's gonna be mock dungeon training, and he will be using real monster behavior and traps to test them all. He says if you take a monster down with a risk level of 1, you get 4 points. Risk level 2 monsters are 8 points each. 20 points if you find the point stick. He says the top 5 students will get a small reward and shop privilege. If you're afraid of failing, you are allowed to make teams. But keep in mind the points will be divided amongst them all. He says if they manage to take another student down then you will earn all of their points, and he dips out. The students start to panic, as the ground begins to shake violently. Giant roots begin to come from underneath. Flame sees a giant shadow overhead. Saying this is the Jack and the Beanstalk map, we see the giant beanstalks all over the arena. It zooms in on a group of students. Flame looks like she's got a plan, saying that she should get going too. Then we hear a familiar voice. Jackie asks if she's going to be alone during practical training. Flame says while forming a team would be good, but it's best she stays alone. She tells her she'll be going alone. Jackie says she understands since the points would be distributed among them. Flame says she sounds sarcastic. She tells her they can group up next time, as she leaves. Flame says it feels like she is mimicking her, but it might be her imagination. She decides that it is most likely just a phase. An hour later we see what I think is a slime exploding. Flame says that this is quite tiring, asking when this will end. Then she spots something. As roots begin to spread toward her, she puts up a barrier, blocking them. The roots start to pull back, and retract underground. She says she didn't expect that, and even the practical training isn't to be underestimated. She says she has collected 18 points so far. It's not bad, but it can be covered by a single stick. She decides that she needs to continue moving. Then she spots something. She feels a presence, wondering if it is a monster, but realizes it's a person. She asks how a student can excuse a presence like this. She sweats nervously, saying it's okay as she's hiding her presence with a spell. With her abilities it would be a good choice to ambush someone. She peeps over at the person, and realizes who it is. We see that it is none other than Yeseol. She wonders if he's going around alone too. She says that many people tried to join him, but he turned them all down. She looks closer, seeing the point stick in his hand. She thinks that this is the perfect chance, and decides to test him here. She begins to cast a spell called Light Cluster, saying the distance between them is around 15 meters. And that he can't do anything crazy from this distance. A larger magic circle forms beneath her. As she begins to go for another spell, she launches out an attack called Light Bullet. As it gets closer to Yesiol, he turns to see the light, but uses Blink to teleport, avoiding the attack. She is completely surprised by this, seeing only the remnants of her attack ahead of her. She asks how he did that, saying that she can't believe he avoided a second-class spell like that. In the meantime, we see him blinking again in the middle of the forest. He says yikes, asking if she wanted to kill him or something, using Light Bullet out of nowhere like that. He says that he's glad his MLS level increased, or else he'd be in big trouble. His Blink is now a class 1 spell, and has a 3-meter increase, and can be used once more in rapid succession. He says he has 2 blinks left, so if he uses the terrain to his advantage he can take her on here, but avoiding is the best choice. He blinks twice more, landing pretty far away. He says that he should be safe all the way out here. His goal is 5th place, so he shouldn't risk anything here. As the 5th place reward are ethelic roots, which increase strength and health by a bit. The top 4 spots will be the main characters anyway. He says that he just needs 3-point sticks. Someone says look who it is. We see 2 people standing, never mind, there's more people who are snickering at him. Yesiol recognizes him. His name is Raiden. He is famous in school right now. He is a member of Uzlek and Jeremy's cliqueception. Yesiol says anyway. Then notices there are 3-point sticks in his hand. He says for a pushover he sure has collected a lot, and one of the kids says he heard that Yesiol cheated. Raiden says to have gotten into the S class purely for those 3 dumb questions. Stella sure has fallen. They call out to him. Raiden says since they've met, he needs to give him his point stick. Yesiol says he doesn't wanna, and Raiden laughs, asking if he is resisting them. He begins to smirk, asking if he thinks he can beat the 4 of them all by himself. They mock how he is such a good staff, but he can't even use it. Yesiol wonders what to do. He says that with a first-class blink it'll be hard to face him who is from a famous family. But maybe if he had 3 blinks. But still, he has a point stick in his hand. And the fact that this is a dungeon is beneficial. He holds the stick out, telling Raiden to take it. Raiden says that's what he's talking about. Yesiol smirks. Then blinks right into Raiden's face. Raiden is caught off guard. Yesiol holds his point stick. Then swings it at Raiden, hitting a barrier of sorts. Raiden grits his teeth, saying this damned commoner is pushing his limits. Raiden swings his wand, and yells saying he's going to get him. But sees that Yesiol has already left. He hears Yesiol behind him, and turns to see him, saying that was dangerous. Then smirks while showing he took one of his point sticks. Raiden tells him to give it back, but again Yesiol says he doesn't wanna. He says the point sticks are efficient, and he learned while playing the game that they are actually a bugged item, due to their unnaturally high durability that allows them to not get destroyed by the magic of students. He looks up, saying while other mages can just use magic, for him it's a weapon that he can swing with full confidence of it not breaking. Raiden clicks his tongue, asking how dare he take what is his. He turns, asking for his boys to do something. But the ground begins to shake around them. Raiden tells them all to get it together and not to lose sight of Yesiol. Yesiol takes the chance to slip out. One of them spots it and calls it out. They fire their magic at him, asking where he's going. Yesiol turns to see their attacks. He says they are better than he thought, but blinks out of their trajectories. They wonder where he's going, saying he's too fast for them to track him. Yesiol says his years of PvP experience will make this easy as hell. Raiden says they just need to hit him once. The dungeon begins to shift again. Raiden tells them to calm down, saying he is still nearby and to wait until it stops shaking to attack. Since if their magic fails there will be a rebound, so they need to be careful. But he's caught off guard by Yesiol right in his face. Yesiol swings the stick at him again, knocking him backward into one of his friends. It ruins the kid's magic like was just discussed. The kid begins to experience rebounding, and lightning begins to zap all around their group. Yesiol blinks out again, and turns back, saying that it's all over now. Raiden turns to see him as Yesiol shows that he took yet another stick from him. He says if he gets a girlfriend later, he'll give her this as a gift. Raiden yells, asking for it back, but Yesiol waves by. Then he blinks off again. Raiden screams out of anger, while we see they were being watched. Yesiol laughs, saying he hit the jackpot. He knocks a vine away, saying if he fought normally he'd have been robbed. But inside of a dungeon it's different. He asks if he's imagining things, saying that he feels something strange from somewhere. But his thought is cut off as he sees a giant fire attack flying straight toward him. We see the explosion from the attack, and Yeseol's feet land somewhere else. He says that was actually hella close, and he could have been in a lot of trouble if they had gotten him. He recognizes the spell, and as a shadowy figure approaches him, we hear a familiar voice calling out, asking why he didn't take the other sticks from those bastards. It's none other than Bien, and Yeseol wonders why she is here. He says he thinks she's misunderstanding something. It's not that he didn't, but rather that he couldn't. In the first place, what does him taking their sticks or not have to do with her? Bien thinks about it for a second, clearly not having a reply, and Yeseol remembers that her brain is smooth as baby shit and barks at her, asking if she was waiting for him to take on all of them so she could take the sticks from him. He reminds her that he just taught her before they came here, and she only replies that she is of royal blood, seemingly proud about it. She says that if he's aware of her intentions, then they should just fight, since taking objects from commoners is undignified for a royal. She says she will defeat him properly and take the sticks from him. Yeseol laughs, saying, "Dignified my ass," asking if she really enjoys robbing weaklings. She asks what he means by weaklings, stating that she saw him joking around with those bastards from the start and that he didn't even use proper magic to face them. We get a flashback to her walking through the woods, saying she has to hurry because she doesn't want to get in trouble with her mother, so she needs to quickly get points. She overhears people talking and looks over to see Raiden's men yapping about how Yeseol is running away. She sees him running off in the distance and wonders if she should intervene between Yeseol and Raiden's group, but realizes taking on 6 people alone would be hard. She decides it's better to wait until the fight is over and they're out of stamina to take the points, but then she's surprised. Yeseol teleports behind Raiden and smacks him with a stick, as we saw earlier, and she realizes that the only spell he's using is Blink. She says they're much weaker than her, but they still grew up in elite mage families. If he's good enough to joke around with them, he must actually be quite powerful. Back to the present, Bien is dead set on using her full power to burn him. She summons multiple magic circles, spewing fire that launches directly toward Yeseol. He leaps into the air, avoiding the attacks, but as he looks over, he spots yet another fireball coming from the side. He quickly uses Blink to reposition himself. Bien is watching intently, seemingly lost in thought. Yeseol says, as expected of her, that was actually really dangerous. It's a good thing he trained his intuition in advance, and using 2 blinks to dodge is difficult. There has to be another way. Bien then asks him if he's still not going to take out his staff. Yeseol asks what she's talking about, reminding her that she took it to get remodeled. She says he must have at least the basic staff given to him when he got in, and he realizes he completely forgot about it, admitting that he never planned to use it, which is why he forgot. She says he is always joking, starting to get frustrated. She realizes she's desperate in this situation, but Yeseol is just joking around with her. She says that she doesn't know about other losers, but it would be good for him to properly go all out against her. Yeseol is confused, saying he has been serious from the start, he just can't use magic right now. As she starts to release more magic, she warns him that if he doesn't, she'll actually kill him. Yeseol realizes something as she unleashes even more power, going full throttle. She says again that if he doesn't take it seriously, she really will kill him. As Bien's fire magic begins to surround Yeseol, she says that she will definitely crush him today, and she launches the attack directly at him. As the flames get closer, Yeseol dodges the first, which she had planned for, as the second is right in his face. He drops to the ground to avoid it but realizes she planned this too, as a fire wave is crashing directly toward him. He says even if he dodges with Blink, the attack is too wide, and he wonders what to do. He hears a strange sound to his left, so he looks over towards it, and realizes that there's a safe area over there, so he blinks twice to avoid the attack, which lands just moments after he leaves. Standing there, watching the aftermath, he says he was lucky this time, but it will definitely get harder from here. Even if he gets close to Bien, the flames surrounding her body will explode the moment he gets near. He knows this from how many times he's lost in PvP against flame mages, and Bien is much stronger than you'd think. If this were Flatland, he'd have been done for in just 1 minute, or rather, he wouldn't have even stood a chance in the first place. Bien follows up with some flame arrows that shoot straight toward him. He grips tightly onto the point sticks, saying he doesn't plan to sit around and do nothing, as he charges forward into the attack, causing a giant explosion. He emerges unscathed, but the arrows turn toward him again. His sixth sense starts to activate. As the arrows slow down in front of him, He can see their trajectories clearly. Now knowing what to do, he begins deflecting them one by one using the point sticks. Bien is shooketh, saying there's no way he's using a weapon to deflect magic, something she never thought possible. As Yesiul continues deflecting her magic, he feels his senses fading as more time passes. The feeling of moving his body and facing a mage, rather than using a mouse and keyboard, is so vivid. He can feel the flow of mana surging, as if he could grab it with his own hands. This sixth sense now feels as familiar to him as sight or hearing. Bien, still wondering how she's losing, bites her lip. She says that, with this location full of trees, it should be more advantageous to her fire attribute. She says she just needs to turn it up a notch. She channels even more magic into her staff. Meanwhile, Yesiul is still deflecting the flame arrows but realizes he can't just keep defending forever. He needs to find a way to use these point sticks to destroy her barrier somehow. As he runs, he spots her figure from behind and changes direction, heading straight toward her. He realizes this is his chance and blinks forward past her flame aura, getting in close. Bien turns, surprised, then grits her teeth. She had actually planned for this. She activates an ability called Light or Crash, as a magic circle appears beneath her. Yesiul recognizes it as a spell used by fire-class bishops in close combat, which causes a knockback explosion for anyone within 2 meters. But he grins, saying he's experienced this countless times. He backpedals from the magic circle. Bien didn't expect this. Right before his feet touch the ground, he instantly pushes himself forward, back into range, hitting her barrier with the point stick. Bien is still lost, wondering how he's managing this. Her barrier begins to crack. Yesiul quickly follows up, and her barrier fully shatters, causing her to fall to the floor. She begins to pant as he approaches her, kneeling down, laughing, and saying that he won. She gets embarrassed, asking him who he really is. He says that he's just a normal student. Then, turning behind him, he tells someone to stop hiding and come out. It's none other than Flame. As Flame walks forward towards them, she says that she wasn't hiding, asking how he knew she was there, and he says that he just had a feeling, but we nod it's because of his sixth sense. She seems suspicious about his answer, and asks him how he broke the magic field with a training device like the point sticks, asking if that was also just a feeling. He says that this kind of bug must not have been in the original novel, but he can't tell her the truth, and tells her that it's actually just really sturdy. She says that a training device has its limits, asking if he really thought that would be able to break the magic shield, then asks him if he knows why normal knights disappear from this world. Yesiul realizes that she's right, and doesn't have a response. She thought he was weird since before, but now she is genuinely curious as to who exactly he is. Bien sits there, not saying a word, and Yesiul realizes he's not in a good position, and it hasn't even been a month into school yet. He debates, revealing his identity. He says that's dangerous, as long as she holds no favor to him. He says he might be suspicious to her, but he's not a bad person at all. She's confused, asking him what that means. He says it's just as he said, and he wants to help her, if anything. She gets even more suspicious, wondering why he would help her, and goes to ask him again who he is, but he realizes it's his chance to leave, and he says that he wants to tell her more, but he doesn't have the time. As soon as he goes to leave, we see Bien glaring at him, as she throws her point sticks at him, hitting him in the back of the head. She's surprised that they actually hit, and he says if she had complaints, she should have used her words. She says that she thought he would catch them, and he can dodge everything else, but he can't catch simple point sticks. There's no helping it, though, because even his sixth sense has a limit, and he tells her that actually hurt. His sixth sense sustainment time depends on his mind power, and since his mind power has bottomed out, his migraines are severe right now. He asks her why she threw these at him. She says that she lost, so he should take them. He wonders if it's her pride, but he can't take all of them, as his rankings would rise too much, and all the other prizes are useless. He takes just one, and smiles, saying she can have the rest of them. Then he goes to leave. As he sits there in his mind, thinking that he's so cool, as he is a man who shows kindness to the opponent he beat. But in reality, we see Flame asking if he's an idiot, and Bien says that she thinks he's a commoner who has no common sense, saying it's ironic, and she starts to think about his actual identity. At the same time, we see a map of the forest. As the teachers are watching it all, we hear one of the teachers laughing, saying the S-class students are incredible this year. Hanwol turns towards them, and we see an old man who is the Magic Council of Elders named Elder Telix, saying it is worth coming to watch, and the Blue Mage Tower Board of Directors, Jarina Eon, saying it sure is fun. Hanwol says that there sure are many big shots who have come to watch these new students, but says that they probably are here just to scout talents, and he's sure most of the other professors are also watching this as well. Hanwol turns to his left, as something interesting pops up, and he says damn, as we see that both Yusong and Wonryong have met each other. Wonryong raises his wand into the air, shooting out a magic attack that flies directly towards Yusong. Yusong soars straight up into the sky, and begins to avoid the icicles, one by one, using some kind of spell to jump between them. Jirina says that it is hella impressive, and Telix wonders if that's possible at the age of 17. Hanwol says generally a normal mage would have to be at least in their mid to late 20s to reach the 3rd rank of that, but Yusong is freely using 3rd rank magic at the age of 17. Jirina says that she truly can't believe what she is watching, as both Yusong and Wonryong are using 3 different elements each to fight each other. Hanwol says that most mages have 1 element, and only after a lot of training can they have 2, and for those who have 3 or more, that is talent, and they both have possessed this talent since birth. We hear a bird screeching, and Hanwol is surprised as we learn that it is a hidden boss that has appeared in between their fight. It lets out a loud screech, and begins to fall directly onto them. Both Wonryong and Yusong are shocked as it is not trying to fight them, and rather it falls straight in between them. We hear Azel asking if they were in the middle of a fight, as she stands atop it, and apologizes for interrupting. Hanwol is still watching, and he kindly explains that a hidden boss is a type of hidden event that only appears once you have abilities past a certain amount. Not only are they hard to find, but it is also not easy to defeat them. If she were to hunt that alone, that is quite something. Jirina recognizes her, and Telix does too, saying it is unfortunate if it wasn't for her father, her talent would bloom even more. Then something catches his attention, as we see Bian with her flame aura around her, and they wonder who she is fighting as he has never seen them before, as we see it as none other than the fight she had with Yuseol, and they watch him use blink. We learned why they are so surprised by this, as although countless scholars tried to control it over hundreds of years, everyone failed and either died or became crippled. So, they gave up on blink. It is a spell that is absolutely impossible to control. Now, we understand why Telix is completely baffled by this, and they wonder who the hell he is. Hanwol tells him that his name is Yuseol, and that he is a very unique student who uses blink as his specialty. They all start to talk about it, and one of them says this is a completely different issue than Yusong, Wonryong, or even Lullaby's overwhelming power. Telix asks why he doesn't use other magic, and instead just jokes around, saying if he used magic, he could have ended this battle long ago, and he does not understand it, but somebody else says that he is actually fighting seriously right now, and they all turn to see him, and we are introduced to Eltman Eltwin, who says that he has been serious from the start, asking if they don't see it that way. Then he says it's interesting, and the way he fights reminds him of the chivalry that once existed in the old generations. Telix asks if he means the same chivalry that disappeared with the cold weapons. Hanwol says he also understands. By chivalry, he is talking about the knight's mentality of those who still use swords in a new world that uses magic. The existence of the heroes who have existed since long ago to protect the world, they were said to have always fought evil with a single sword. Telix says for magic to exist, but to still fight with a sword by choice is something that is not possible. But right now, he is actually using the point sword as a stick, and if that is what Eltwin is feeling as the headmaster of Stella Academy, which is the best magic academy in the world, and a 9th ranked master mage and one of the only 10 great sages on the continent, if this is truly what the great sage thinks, then it must be true. It jumps to later as the first dungeon practical training area has now ended. We are at the S-Class exclusive training hall. We see somebody using magic on one of the dummies, none other than Wonryong, practicing. He grips tightly on his wand, saying he is still too far behind. 39 of the 141 students who participated in the practical training were eliminated. Azel, who defeated the mysterious bird, came first, then Wonryong came second. Yusong got 6th, but he still doesn't feel like he won. Back then, if Azel had not interrupted, he definitely would have lost, and he grits his teeth in frustration, saying it's been the case since he first saw him. Yusong half-assed everything, but regardless of what he did, he would get above expert results. Even in this practical training, he set up magic circles all around and thoroughly calculated his movements, yet Yusong received all of his attacks with complete ease. He wonders if he truly can't beat him no matter what he does, and if the wall of talent was this much to overcome. He starts to calm himself down, saying there's no time to blame himself, and he just has to work harder. It jumps to Bian strolling through the training ground as she spots Wonryong still training his magic on the dummies. She says usually he's calm, But today he seems very spiteful. But that's not something she should be saying, as she starts to cast her own magic towards the dummies. She's also hella pissed that she lost. Wonryong looks over, seeing her training as well. Bien says even after being defeated, the point stick she got put her in third place, which upsets her. And while her mother was satisfied, if she didn't receive that, she would have been punished. She's hella annoyed by how Yeseol was acting during the whole fight. Wonryong sits there, staring at her, and wonders if maybe something happened to her as well, and he doesn't know if this is just a feeling, but her magic seems to have gotten more accurate than earlier. With how explosive her fire magic is, it's almost impossible to control it precisely, so he doesn't think there's any way she could have improved so much in that short period of time, so it must be a coincidence. We see internally she's still in denial, as she doesn't want to admit that Yeseol's classes have been effective. After switching to the pun quizzes, her magic achievement has increased tremendously. He's just a commoner, and his grades are terrible, and his personality is also hot ass, but she's sure that Yeseol is the only person who knows the method to supplement her weakness. But it still makes her really upset. Karin calls out to her, and says that the staff Teravan which she requested to be remodeled is complete, and wonders if she should give it back to Yeseol now. Bien says yes, and Taran goes to leave, but Bien tells her to wait, and Taran asks her what's wrong. As we see she is flushed. It jumps to the second main tower, and Bien says that she came here because she heard Yeseol was here, but this is where the faculty's research facilities are, and she wonders if maybe he's here to meet a professor. She then begins to get embarrassed again, wondering why she came here, saying that she can just give it to him in the training hall, and if she does this, it makes it seem like she's following him around, and this can't be, so she should return. As she goes to leave, somebody calls out to her, and we learn it's a teacher named Hamerl. Bien says it's been a while, and Hamerl says it feels just like yesterday when she was teaching magic at the castle, yet she's already gotten so old, and asks her why she's here. Bien says she has some business here, but she is returning. Hamerl says it's a bit in shambles right now, so that would be for the best. Bien asks what's going on, and Hamerl says right now it's hectic because some magic officials have come due to a student named Yeseol. Bien is surprised about it, and asks why they're here for him. Hamerl says she's sure she knows because she fought him herself, but that student didn't use magic. Bien starts to get embarrassed, and she must have watched, that means she showed an unsightly state to the teacher she respects the most. Hamerl realizes how much it's pressuring her, and tells her not to feel bad, as Yeseol was doing his best. Bien says he didn't even use magic though, and she tells her that is because of his creed. Bien asks what she means, and Hamerl says that the headmaster saw him fight, and said that he thought he was trying to revive chivalry, which disappeared many generations ago. Bien says that makes absolutely no sense, and then is surprised, recalling the fight, saying he definitely did use the point stick as a sword during their battle, and then wonders if maybe that's why he wanted Teravan in the shape of a sword as well. She audibly gulps, and says that by not using magic in a magic academy, he will get an incredible penalty, and he'll end up receiving penalty points during practical training, among other things. Hamerl says that he decided to walk this path despite knowing that, saying that in itself is commendable, and the fact that he still pushes himself even after accomplishing the great achievement of Blink makes her think that his creed must be real. It jumps to later that she is waiting at the gates, and Bien says if anyone said they dreamed of chivalry, everybody would mock them, since nobody thinks that there can be a knight in this generation. But Yeseol is seeking chivalry sincerely, and she wonders if it's still a joke. She got so angry at him, telling him not to joke around, and on cue, he approaches, asking her what she's doing as he is eating his rewards from 5th place. She immediately blushes, and says that she's not here because of him, and he says that he never said she was. She awkwardly stares at him, and he's confused, but then she hands him Teravan, telling him to take this. He opens it up, and sees that it's a shapeless sword, saying as expected of their craftsmanship, it is unmatched. It's a good thing he helped Bien. He asks her if he can keep the box, saying he thinks he can get a good price if he sells it. She tells him to do as he wishes, and then sighs, calling him a commoner. She has more to ask him, so she calls out his name, asking if he is really planning to not use other magic. He wonders why she's curious, but she gets flustered and leaves, saying that he doesn't have to answer. He's still curious, and turns, saying that earlier Hanwol also said something similar, that he understood his intentions, and that he respected his creed or some nonsense like that. But he decides that if that's how they're going to misunderstand it, that's fine by him. And if he has this magic sword, he'll be safe enough for the next episode, and he decides to go to the training ground to try it out. We see him holding onto it, and he begins to channel his mana into it, and the sword immediately grows in shape. He is completely surprised by it, saying this is way better than he expected. It would have been better if Flame had wielded this, as she is the female lead and quite special. Even though she's human, she can wield elf, dwarf, and angel magic, since the staff can't be used by just anyone, as it continuously absorbs their mana. She recovers her mana using the energy of nature, and this wand would be incredibly lethal in her hands, but he doesn't have any mana to begin with. Although he's continuously absorbing mana, it cannot accumulate in the body, and is expelled due to the mana revelation delay physique. In other words, the concentration of mana within his breathing is used as the output of Terravan. He opens his status window, and we can see all of his stats. The percentages have gone up a good bit, and his actual strength, agility, and sensitivity have increased as well, and he says it's thanks to the roots from the practical training rewards. Since he has a weapon, he can directly increase these now, instead of doing that by using experience, and it's time for him to start practicing with his sword, which means he's going to get very busy from now on. It cuts yet again to the training area, as one of the professors is saying that from today onwards, they'll all be practicing proper magic, and he tells them all to spread out and hold their staffs. His name is Varian. We see everybody casting magic as he walks around, and he says there are quite a lot of talented students in this group, and that's a good thing. He lined them up by their rank. Something gets his attention, as we see he's staring directly at Yesiol, saying it's the infamous S-class student. He's a commoner who resonated with an upper middle class staff, and got 5th place in the dungeon practical training, but he does not like him. So Varian approaches Yesiol, asking him why he's not doing anything. Yesiol says that he's learning a different defensive technique, so he doesn't need to learn the basics. Varian's not amused, and says that makes him very curious. In reality, he calls him arrogant, saying maybe he'd understand if he was learning the succession magic of Bian's kingdom, but how could a normal commoner learn something like that? He heard that Yesiol can't use any magic other than blink in the first place, and if that's the case, he wants to see it. So he tells Yesiol to show him an example to the other students as well, and he turns around, saying he'll pick him an opponent. He picks out a B-class student named Morso, who grins at Yesiol. Varian says that for him, the lecture of defense magic to stand out is a good one, and that Morso is from the Skalvan Empire, so it'll be helpful to give him a good impression. If he shows impressive magic against an S-class student, it'll be good for him. Yesiol agrees to it, and Varian tells them to both stand on the platform, as they stand across from each other. Morso is still grinning, but Yesiol doesn't seem interested. Morso's group start telling him to crush him, and he says that's the plan. Yesiol looks over and sees both Uzlek and Raiden, and lets out a sigh. He's only taking it because it's a mandatory class, and there is nothing to do since he can't use magic. And that Varian has always been notorious since the first episode. He begins to grin, saying it's time to check the results of his training up until now. Varian says that the duel will be based on attack and defense turns, and you cannot use magic outside of them, and he tells Morso to begin. Raiden says that Morso will definitely win, since he's learned offensive Earth-class magic, and Uzlek says it will be hard to defend against that. We see Jeremy smiling, but he doesn't say anything. Varian tells them to get ready, and announces the start of the duel, as Morso raises a giant rock using his magic. The other students say it's second-rank magic, and they're only meant to use first rank during mock duels, and they wonder if Yesiol will be okay. Morso launches it out, and we learn it's called the Dorden Stone Pierce. Bro really said his family name before the name of the attack. As it flies directly towards Yesiol, he begins to imbue his mana into his blade as it takes shape, and he slices it straight in half. It flies past him, disintegrating into the air. Varian is speechless, and Jeremy starts to lock in, but Morso is shaking, saying there's no way his magic just disappeared. Yesiol starts to stretch since it's his turn, and the other students wonder where Morso's magic just went. Varian says it would make no sense for it to disappear from just a normal slash, however, it really did vanish as he can't sense it anymore. All magic has a path of mana, but in the case where you accurately cut that, the magic will be extinguished, and he wonders if that is something Yesiol is truly capable of. Yesiol's just happy that his blade is better than he thought, although he can only barely manage to cut third-rank magic. It was good that he practiced in the training hall for a few days without rest, and this might actually be doable. Morso starts to get annoyed, asking how a commoner cut his magic, and Varian realizes this is troublesome, as if Morso loses, it'll be annoying for him too. He tells Yesiol that his defensive magic is good, but there is a limit to deflecting attacks one by one. For example, if multiple attacks come towards him, Morso realizes that he's giving him some pointers and begins to grin, and Yesiol's annoyed, saying he just had to open his mouth. As he looks back, he sees Morso preparing an army of his stone peers, and Morso begins to have that grin as usual on his face. I thought this was meant to be turn-based. The other students say this is too much, and that Yesiel is going to get hurt at this rate, wondering why Varian is not stopping the duel. Morso launches his magic out, saying he's going to end things here, and they all start to fly out towards Yesiel, and he watches as they get closer. Yesiel recognizes that there are 11 stones coming directly at him, and if he can't use blink or slice them, he only has one choice left, which is to block them, as we see him do exactly that, and they all begin to shatter. Morso starts to panic because his strongest spell is blocked hella easily. Varian wonders what he is doing, saying if he loses, it's going to be really bad for him. Yesiel says that he just tried copying something he saw in another game, and he's surprised it worked. It was called panning. Terravan has the disadvantage of requiring several times more mind power than others to maintain its form, so after using it, your stamina will rapidly fall, and since the defensive power is weaker than when blocking a single item, it would have been difficult to use in a natural fight, and he is relieved that this is only a duel. The other students say they have never seen something like that before, saying that it was just like a magic shield, and they all begin to realize that Morso is going to lose. He grits his teeth out of anger, and begins to imbue a green aura onto his staff, asking how dare a commoner embarrass him like this. The other students wonder what he is doing since his turn just ended, but Varian just wants him to keep attacking. Morso yells, telling Yesiel to prepare himself, as he will take him down this time. Then we hear Jeremy call out to the teacher, who is confused, and asks him what is wrong. Jeremy smiles, asking him why he is not giving Yesiel his attack turn. Varian freezes up, and the other students start to discuss among themselves, saying that this isn't a basic duel anymore. They start to see Varian in a negative light, and he realizes he was too focused on the duel to notice their reactions. He stares at Jeremy, who asks him why he is not doing anything. Varian then says that he is going to change the turn, and as soon as we hear Morso say magic shield, the fight is already over, as Yesiel has his sword right at his throat. Morso is baffled by what happened, and the other students say that Yesiel is more impressive than they thought. Jeremy begins to smile, as he has something in mind. It jumps to a fancy room, as we hear somebody being beaten. After we hear their voice, it's none other than Morso, and a woman is watching. Morso drops to the floor, soaked in blood, and we see Jeremy standing above him. He walks over to a woman named Varian, and says that he thinks his friend is pretty hurt, asking if she can take a look at him, and if something goes wrong, he'll be very sad. She says she understands, and he thanks her while walking away. We see her making a confused face, saying that he called him a friend rather than a loyal subject. Within the Skalvan Empire, where the heir to the throne is decided solely by magic ability, Crown Prince Jeremy obtained the role of Crown Prince after beating his brothers at the age of 12. The fact that Morso is not his loyal subject means that the Dordan family has been thrown out of the political world. It's not just Morso. Since he's caught the eye of Crown Prince Jeremy, that commoner named Yesiel won't have a comfortable life either. We see both Flame and Azel in the classroom, and the other students start to talk about Yesiel and his chivalry, and they bring up the recent duel he had beating Morso, and how Morso's family is influential in the Skalvan Empire. Flame is annoyed since no matter where she goes, they keep talking about Yesiel. It's not that she wants attention, but she dislikes how much he is gaining. The teacher tells everybody to focus, saying that alchemy requires accurate measurement, timing, and perfect temperature control. We are introduced to the professor named Maison Turenne. She says today they'll be practicing the Turenne fatigue recovery potion that she created, so to focus. Flame is annoyed, saying that if she does one thing wrong, it'll all go bad, and that alchemy is very difficult, so she avoids it. We hear Maison calling out to a woman named Altalicia, saying that's dangerous, asking what she's doing, and that she can't call herself an alchemist like this. Flame says one day, Professor Maison will blacken and become unruly. I don't know what that means, and she has to stay in this class to prepare for that. She then begins to hear laughter. She turns, seeing Yesiel smiling like a villain and laughing, saying this is it. She says at first she thought he took this course to get close to Azel, but it seems like he's just a pervert, asking what the hell he's doing, but decides to ignore it and just go get some ingredients. We see some red potions on the table, and she sighs, saying she finally finished it. Thanks to the fact that Flame's academic achievement is high, she can make it quickly. Then she turns, wondering how Azel is doing, as we see that she is still working, and Flame says that she's pretty decent. Then she's surprised that she's only decent, saying in the original novel, Azel coincidentally comes across some magic engineering notes, and she created a high-rank compatible good to the Turen fatigue recovery potion inside of this class, but for some reason, she's only making a normal potion. We then hear Mason asking Yeseol, who told him he could change the experiment ingredients as he wished. He asks what's wrong with doing it this way, as it's more effective. She says that the result is the problem, as this is different from the Turen fatigue potion that she requested. Flame is surprised, and wonders if Yeseol made the quality potion that Azel was supposed to make here instead. Flame starts to find it strange, asking how Yeseol was able to make the potion that Azel was meant to make. Mason sighs, saying he just won't listen, and his attitude is a mess, and this is why commoners won't do. Flame recognizes it, saying that the line was originally meant to be, "This is why your family fell." Those words became traumatic to Azel, who lost her family, and they bothered her until the moment she finished making the potion. She wonders if maybe Yeseol knew this and purposely got on Professor Mason's bad side to help protect Azel from that. Professor Mason is quite the influence within Stella, and if you get on her bad side once, there will be after effects on your grades and other classes. So what is Yeseol's deal? Why would he go that far for her? Mason yells, asking, "What's with that tone of voice?" and tells Yeseol to bring his parents here immediately. He sighs, saying he was so focused on alchemy, he really forgot about this annoying development, and he tells her that he doesn't have parents. She gets embarrassed and flustered, and Yeseol says it's too late, he's already gotten on her bad side, so there's not much he can do, but he decides not to worry about it, as tomorrow he can focus on making a kimchi potion and a cola potion. What is bro cooking? A few weeks later, we hear Mason yelling at him once more, saying that she's told him repeatedly not to use ingredients she hasn't taught him about. He says that he's currently creating better results by slightly altering her compositions. She starts to bark at him, and he adjusts his bulbul glasses. Yeseol says that the progress is going well, just as planned. In episode 8, her erosion peaks, and she is unable to defeat her emotions, undergoing dark demonification, becoming one of the villains. Once her dark demon erosion progresses to 90%, she completely becomes a dark demonic being. But while her erosion is under 50%, it's impossible to find out through magic. Her progress is currently at 21%. He can't report her, or prove that she's a dark, demonic human, so he just needs to continuously provoke her, and once it passes 50%, he'll call in the Dark Demon Assassination Squad. For a typical dark demon erosion, there would have been a way to overturn it before she completely underwent demonification. However, she is a contractor who went with a dark, demonic human of her own volition, and the dark, demonic human seeds inside her are already blossoming, so it's impossible to reverse. The 4th episode hasn't even started yet, but she's a very strong boss, so he needs to prepare beforehand. If he doesn't, she'll turn other students into dark, demonic humans and threaten Stella. What a waste of a baddie. Mason says that his attitude is still the same as ever, and he should not expect a good mark from the alchemy subject. He says this is better, because if he doesn't receive attention, there won't be any additional damage. He begins to realize that thought process was not it, as the practical exam was a group project. We see the other students looking nervous, while Azel is lost in thought. He realizes the atmosphere is bad here, and somebody would mistake it for a funeral, and introduces himself to them all. We are introduced to his classmates, Sehun and Liwan, and of course, Azel. Liwan sighs, saying that their group is screwed, and that Mason always gives bad marks as soon as she hates someone, so they shouldn't even bother with the test, and Yeseol starts to feel sorry. Azel asks how they are meant to give up, saying the practical exam is assessed by at least 3 alchemists from the alchemy castle. That means Professor Mason can't ruin their grades all by herself. Sehun and Liwan look relieved, and begin to smile at each other, saying they should try their best. Then it's a relief, as there is something they wanted to make once. Yeseol smiles at her, and she turns away, acting like it wasn't a big deal at all. She says that the D-Vitality potion given for this assignment won't be hard if they combine the knowledge they've learned, however, they need to gather the ingredients as well. She asks who wants to get the tail of a fire lizard, and Yeseol says he'll do that. She asks if he knows that the monster's corpse is the most important part of alchemy, and he tells her, of course. She says that he's so confident, wondering if she can trust him. Yeseol smiles, saying that he'll just dropship the fire lizard here. We see a student going up to Mason, and she asks if he can give this note to the C group first-year alchemy students, but to everybody other than Team 12. He says, of course. The alchemy practical exam is done in front of the alchemy castle's official alchemist. If he shows a pathetic sight in front of them, his path as an alchemist will be blocked forever. Mason looks proud of herself, saying that she'll teach him what it means to go against a professor. It jumps to the S-class training hall, as we see Flame standing there, and a man approaches her, saying that he was told to give this to her as it's an alchemy announcement. She thanks him, and the man tells her that Mason said not to tell the other students. Flame sighs, saying that just means she's talking about Team 12, asking if she really thought she would just do nothing. She says to wait, because if Yesiel knows the original novel, he'll be prepared for this incident, and he'll prepare not the tail of a fire lizard needed for the D-Vitality potion, but rather the italic spider scale for the Tyren point potion. She says, yes, and this will be a chance to finally test Yesiel. It jumps to time being warped to the stadium for the exam, and he says he likes warped and all, but it's always nauseating. A woman welcomes him, calling him Mage Yesiel, and welcomes him to Dereval. He says he's not an official mage yet, rather just a cadet, and she says that a cadet of Stella is worthy of the same treatment as an official mage. Some other people around start to realize that he's a Stella cadet, saying they've never seen the Stella uniform before, and that they're very jealous of it. The woman says if he needs any help to let her know. He says as long as he has a pass and a Stella pocket watch, he'll get treated as an official mage no matter where he goes, and Stella sure is nice. Not to mention, he can use a warp hole that costs 100,000 credits for free. Thanks to that, he's been using the warp hole every weekend to go around the city, and he confirmed that the information he has is mostly the same. He looks around, saying it should be around here somewhere. Today's goal is a fire lizard, which is known to have a risk level of 2. Although its stamina and power are stronger than that of most beasts, you have to use at least second rank magic to catch one due to its magic resistance and quick movements. When he tested out by catching risk level 1 monsters, it was pretty easy, so he thinks he'll be able to handle a risk level 2 monster. It quickly runs behind him, and he draws out Terravan, saying that it's here. He starts to walk around the bushes, waiting for it to jump out from, and it spots him and starts to charge at him. His sixth sense activates, and he turns, stabbing it directly in the throat. The monster screeches after getting impaled. Yesiel watches as it draws its last few breaths, falling to the floor, and he says he's got one. He starts to hear more footsteps as he turns to see 3 more pop out, and he smiles, saying it's time to get to work, and he charges straight towards them all. We see Azel making a really surprised expression, saying that it's super fresh, and Yesiel says, obviously. She clears her throat, saying he seems to care and has an eye for ingredients, and he smiles, saying as long as she's aware. She then says now they just need to make it perfectly, and it's time for them all to do this. He asks if everybody's gathered, saying today's exam, as she said, will be carried out in front of the alchemist from Alchemy Castle. If they do well here, it'll be helpful for their futures as alchemists, and says it's time to begin. Today's exam subject is the Tyren point potion. Type B. Yesiel is surprised, and so are the rest. Azel says that she thought the exam was on the D-Vitality potion. Mason says yes, but she sent out an announcement that it was changed to the Tyren point potion, saying that everybody else already knew about it. Yesiel realizes this is how she's going to play. It doesn't matter to him, but it will be tough for the others if they fail because of this. He wonders if this was part of the original novel. Flame turns to look at him, and as soon as he makes eye contact with her, she instantly turns her head, and he's curious. She wonders what happened, saying that she thought Yesiel would know the original novel, but why was he unable to prevent this from happening? Mason asks if Azel prepared the wrong ingredients, and she goes to explain it. Mason scoffs, saying she forgot the goal of an alchemist is to prepare ingredients, and she shouldn't follow the path of an alchemist. There's no helping it. She goes to disqualify them, but Yesiel says to wait. Since they just need to make the Tyren point potion, they can do that. She asks what he means, and he says that they'll make it right here, a potion with higher efficacy than hers, using different ingredients than she did, just as he always has in the rest of her classes. Mason laughs, saying that the core ingredient for the potion is the italic spider scales, and they have a vast amount of nutrients. The point potion is a thermal supplement created with that as the foundation, but he's going to try to make it using the tail of a fire lizard. She smiles, saying this is better, if anything, and she'll end his path as an alchemist in front of everybody. She says the time limit is 1 hour, and that he needs to complete the point potion in that exact time. Liwan asks if he's crazy, and Sehun says that he doesn't think this is right. Yesiel says that since it's come to this, they have no choice but to try, telling them all to trust him. As it's better to try something than to get disqualified, they decide to go along with it and get hyped up, saying they want to help, and it's time to show these alchemists what they've got. Yesiel smiles, saying he'll explain the plan to them now. Yesiol explains that alchemy was one of his main interests while playing the game, and he recorded each and every trivial recipe. Of course, among them was the recipe for the Turen Point Potion Type B. He wasn't going to do this because it was originally going to be a recipe that Mason invented in the future, but he needs to do it now. He says the reason the spider's scales have a lot of nutrients is so that it can hatch eggs, and it has a similar feature to the tail of a fire lizard, the blood vessels. The Alakare tribe in the southern desert is said to use these blood vessels to improve the health of their leaders, and using them also results in a longer life expectancy, so they can use this instead. Li Wan says that he has some knowledge about the Alakare process, asking if he can take this on. Yesiol says, of course. Yesiol then explains that the spiked mulberry mistletoe should be dehydrated using the desert style of mana release, asking if anyone knows how to do that. Sahun says that he learned it when going around with his dad before, and he should be able to get it done within 5 minutes. He goes to explain the next part of the process, and Azel says she'll do it. We see the group getting to work on their part of the project, and Yesiol says they're better than he expected. From now on, they should blend it all together like he instructed each one of them. It jumps to Mason making a surprised face, as there is a potion in front of them. Yesiol says it is the Turen Point Potion Type B. The other alchemists say they can't believe it, asking if children really created this. Mason says not to make her laugh, and that the Turen Point Potion is something she invented after countless years of research, and there's no way they could have completed it this easily. One of the alchemists says they'll check it personally. She begins to cast magic on it and is shocked. The others ask what's wrong, and she says it's incomplete and there are a bit too many of the ingredients added. But this potion is much more effective than Professor Mason's. Everybody looks happy, and the alchemists start praising it, while Mason shakes and begins to get furious. Yelling for them to pass it over, she says she'll check the quality herself. She grabs onto it, and we see that she's also surprised. She says there's no doubt about it. Her technique that uses a monster's nutrients to replace a human's vitality has definitely been applied here. This is clearly a perfect Turen Point potion, but there's no way they could create a result that's better than her potion on the spot. She wants to break it, but decides that she's the one who still gives the grade, so she gently sets it down so she can disqualify them for missing ingredients. She goes to give them a grade, but the other alchemist says that even an A+ wouldn't be enough for Team 12. She agrees. Mason gets annoyed, calling them old, and grits her teeth, reluctantly telling Team 12 that they have passed. They all start smiling, saying they did it. While they start to talk to each other, we see Mason is furious, telling Yesiol just to wait, and that her progress has increased for her potion. Back at the training ground, we see everybody practicing magic, and Flame says she's finally finished, and going to school at this age makes her body ache. We hear some students telling our Shoong that it's okay, and that she's doing well, and that she's still doing better than the princess. As we see our Shoong wiping away tears, Flame says she's the one who is the genius fire class mage. Then they start to talk about how Bian's growth is scary. One of the girls says she's practiced for several years, but soon enough, her control may surpass hers. Flame seems surprised by this, saying that Bian's control should only start to develop in the second year, so how is she already doing it? She begins to wonder if maybe it is Yesiol's doing as well, and that the alchemy practical exam was strange too. The Turen Point Potion Type B was a recipe that the future Azel was supposed to find, which Professor Mason would then steal and complete. How is it that Yesiol could know the recipe that didn't even appear in the original novel? It seems he didn't know that the incident was going to happen. She then starts to think that Yesiol knows about the future but doesn't know about the original novel, and says maybe he's not a possessor, but rather a regressor. That makes sense if Yesiol came from the future. He may know about the future, but not the small incidents that occurred to Azel. In the original novel, Yusong did once obtain the opportunity to regress, given by the sole being with the power of time in this world, the 11th moon of the Silver Age. We hear Wonryong asking her what's wrong, and she wonders why he's calling out to her, but says it's good timing, asking what he thinks about Yesiol. He says he doesn't know why she's asking him about that, but he just thinks that he's a slightly strange student. She asks if he feels anything else, and he says not really. She sighs, saying she understands. Wonryong asks if maybe she's bothered by Yesiol, and she says yes, she is. He says he understands. Flame says since it seems that Yesiol knows about the original novel just like she does, this won't do. He asks what she means, and she says that whining like this doesn't match her personality, but since he's here, she's going to confide her thoughts to Yesiol. He wonders what she means by confiding her thoughts. As he stands there curious, she waves, saying that she's gonna head off and thanks him for hearing her out. Wonryong waves back at her, but in reality, he's lost in thought about something. He looks like he wanted to say something to her, but he just let her leave. It jumps to the next day, as Yeseol's sitting at a cafe, and he sighs, wondering what to do now. He's saying that currently, Maison's erosion progress is at 37%. That means the incident will take place within 3 months, and her dark demon erosion randomly affects one student. There are 3 candidates, Jackie, Arsho-ong, and Wonryong. If Wonryong gets involved, it's the worst case scenario. It's something that he's always had to be careful of in the game, as getting it always meant a bad ending. He starts to think about who the most likely of the 3 would be, and then he's surprised as Flame is standing before him. She asks who he is, and he asks what she's saying so suddenly. She says that last time he didn't answer about his identity. He wonders why he's getting this question again, and says that it's making things difficult for him. He looks back up at her, thinking that telling her the truth and obtaining information from her might actually help him get to the true ending, and since he has nothing to lose, he should just say it. So he opens his mouth to tell her, but a bunch of status warnings begin to appear, saying he lacks narrative power, and he can't reveal the fact that he is a possessor. He says this is driving him nuts, but thinks he can do it like this. He says they both have secrets they don't want to reveal to each other, so they can just tell each other half of it. She agrees, saying fine, and says that she'll ask first, confirming that he knows the future. He wonders why she's accelerating it, saying he only said to tell half, and he says that the fact she's asking that means she must also know the future, asking what she's trying to achieve by going to school. She says it's to move the world in a direction where it doesn't collapse, as the world is unstable. He says that's a relief, though he can't tell if she's telling the truth or not. Then she says it's her turn, asking him why he's acting like this. He wonders what she means and decides to speak vaguely, saying that it's just because he thinks this is for the best. He awkwardly smiles, thinking that should be enough, but she yells at him, telling him not to lie, asking how someone can be that kind, and says there's definitely some kind of. It jumps again, this time to Flame laying in bed, saying that she chose a 4-person room because she liked the bustle. But if she knew it would be like this, she would have just chosen an S-class exclusive 1-person room, as it's too noisy to sleep. She opens her eyes, thinking about Yeseol, saying that he definitely said he did not have a goal. And that's evidence that he regressed, no doubt about it. The last part of the original novel, The 11th Moon of the Silver Age, says this to Yusong: you can turn back time, but at the price, you will lose most of your memories, and after completing your mission, your existence will cease to be. No one will remember that you saved the world, and even those you loved will come to forget you. Asking if you really wanted to go back and walk those steps again. Yusong says if that's his fate, he will accept it. But Azel stopped him from that, as she told him to wait, saying that rather than living in a world without him, she'd rather go to ruin while remembering him. And they hold each other, embracing as the world ends. Convinced by her, he gave up regressing, and that was how the epilogue ended. She sits up in bed, saying that if this world is a different story from the original novel, and it was Yeseol who used the 11th moon of the Silver Age's power to regress, after fulfilling his mission, Yeseol will disappear, and his existence will be completely erased from this world. But the one who should have lost most of his memories, and only has his mission, said he just wants to live. We see her really conflicted about it as she squeezes her bedsheets, and she does not finish her thoughts. She hears her door open, and she turns to see Jackie, saying that Wonryong had come for her, and that he's waiting on the first floor of the dorm. She says just to tell him that she's not here. Jackie tries to explain it to her, but Flame doesn't seem interested, saying that she's going to sleep. Jackie is surprised and audibly gulps. Outside, we see Wonryong waiting, and Jackie runs over, nervously calling out to him. She smiles widely when he turns to her. Then he asks who she is, asking her where Flame is. She says that she's sick and sleeping. Wonryong wonders if she's feeling down because she confessed and was rejected. He tells Jackie he'll go back. We see Jackie just standing there, distraught since she likes Wonryong so much, yet he can't even remember her name, and that it's always been this way. Flame has outstanding ability, always takes everybody's attention from her, and she is everything that Jackie ever wanted. The most important thing is Wonryong's heart. We see her standing at her shadow. She clenches her fist, saying that's annoying because she realizes she's living in someone else's shadow. It jumps to the next day in the first main tower. We hear a man telling Mason that she was embarrassed by a student. She says she's ashamed, and that she must be well aware there are high expectations for her. It is the vice principal of the academy, named Akihaden. He asks her if the research on the random sequence convergence technique is progressing well. Mason says of course, that she won't disappoint him. He puts his hand on her shoulder, saying that he'll trust her. As soon as she goes to leave, his smile drops, and he calls her an idiot, saying she doesn't even know she's being used. She's blinded by glory. He begins to laugh, saying that a magic warrior who's meant to fight against dark demonic humans is performing research for them. He cannot wait for the day when alchemic magic engineering is complete. We get another cut as we see a giant stack of paper, with Altalicia struggling to walk, saying she can't see. Somebody lifts up half of it, which surprises her, and Yesiol asks her if she's okay. We see them setting down the papers somewhere else, and she thanks him, saying if it wasn't for him, she would have gotten in trouble with Professor Mason again. He tells her it's nothing. Then he looks around the room, saying this place looks like Asmongold's room. Something catches his attention as there is a formula written on the board. Altalicia explains that it's something Mason is researching with the doctors, and she thinks it was called the random sequence convergence technique. Yesiol recognizes it, asking if this is really that technique. He explains that the first formula of alchemic magic engineering is this technique. In Professor Mason's blackening episode, she and the demonic humans work together to complete this technique. As a result, the difference in technical skills leads to incredible damage, but after Altalicia appears, the situation changes. He begins to wonder what if she is to solve this technique before the dark demonic humans do. So he calls out to her, and she asks if he wants some coffee too, but he says no, asking if it bothers her that Professor Mason is always barking at her. She asks why he's asking all of a sudden, and he wonders if, given the chance to take revenge, if she would accept it. If you've watched till the end, comment, rocket, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.